North Laikipia. On your behalf, honorable members, and my own behalf, I welcome the schools and the students, their teachers, to the House of Parliament. I've been asked by the member for Kabuchai for a minute. On behalf of your school and all other schools, welcome them to the House of Parliament.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir, for allowing me this time to welcome all these very good schools to this House. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I also take this time also to thank you, because it is during your time when you are Member of Parliament for Sirisia constituency and Minister of Foreign Affairs that this very good school, Jewel Academy, was initiated through your guidance, Mr. Speaker. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving us this good praise in our constituency called Kabuchai and any other school that has come to this House. So, Speaker, the performance of this school is exemplary good like yourself. This school, Mr. Speaker, came third in the entire Western Province, hammering 388 marks as a mini score. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, because this school rests in my constituency. I'm delighted to welcome them to this House. And they now see how I speak English on the floor of the House. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Chepkonga.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I have two motions to move. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion: that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Excise Duty Amendment Regulations 2023 laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 1st August 2023, approves Excise Duty Amendment Regulations published as legal notice number 40 of 2023. Honorable Speaker, can I move the next motion?
Yes.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion: that pursuant to the provisions of Section 15, subsection 3 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013, relating to the extension of period of handling statutory instruments by National Assembly, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the following statutory instruments by a period of 21 days. 1, the National Cereals and Produce Board National Strategic Reserve Regulation 2023, legal notice number 25 of 2023, with effect from 1st August 2023. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, the Universities Regulations 2023, legal notice number 56 of 2023, with effect from the 17th of August 2023. And third and finally, Access to Information General Regulations 2023, legal notice number 57 of 2023, with effect from 17th of August 2023. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Chepkonga. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
The Honorable Indikiri Mugambi, Captain Bunge Golf Team.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Orders 43.1, I wish to make a statement on the participation of the Bunge Golf Team in the Uganda-Kenya bilateral golf tournament hosted by the Parliament of Uganda Golf Team. Honorable Speaker, Parliament of Kenya has, through the Parliamentary Service Commission, incorporated sport as one of the activities aimed at enhancing wellness among members and staff, while also entrenching institutional teamwork, unity, and collaborations. Sport play vital role in fostering unity, discipline, and healthy competition, not only within our region, but also among members of Parliament and the staff in the East Africa community. To this end, our Parliament embraced the sporting activities as one of the avenues for promoting parliamentary democracy and deepening cooperation among the East Africa Community partner states. Honorable Speaker, further, in line with the promotion of parliamentary diplomacy and regional integration through sports, I'm honored to report to this House that the Bunge golf team participated in a friendly golf tournament in Entebbe, Uganda between 21st to 27th May 2023 and the auspices of Parliament of Uganda Parliament golf team. The team gallantly staged a strong challenge and emerged runners-up in the prestigious tournament and produced the best female and male golfers of the tournament. Indeed, our sportsmen and women demonstrated a true spirit of resilience and determination that serve as an inspiration to others to enable emulate in pursuing excellence. As the Bunge golf team captain, I am proud of our golfers for their commitment to the game and dedication that brought glory to our institution. Honorable Speaker, the outstanding achievement by the team would not have been possible without your unwavering support as a passionate sport enthusiast to the team in the endeavors. With your indulgence, I invite members to join us in commending the Bunge golf team for its exemplary performance. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Indigiri, and on behalf of the House, I want to congratulate the team for the exemplary performance. Indeed, the big cup that you won in Kampala, you came and presented to Mr. Speaker, and the victory and pride is not just for the team, but for the entire Parliament. Well done. Member for Ganze, Honorable Tungule Kenneth Kazungu. Give Honorable Kazungu the mic. He's over there. There you are, Honorable Kazungu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. This is a request for statement regarding the human-wildlife conflicts in parts of Ganze constituency. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 44-2 into brackets C, I wish to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Tourism and Wildlife regarding the serious human-wildlife conflict currently being experienced in parts of Ganze constituency. Honorable Speaker, in the recent past, Mitangani, Bamba, Bandari, Ndigiria, Murimwandege, and Mahera locations in Ganze constituency are experiencing an influx of unprecedented large herds of elephants invading farms and residential areas. The said areas received rains after a debilitating drought that lasted for 7 consecutive seasons. Honorable Speaker, this matter was reported to KWS officers stationed in Gede, Malindi, whose response have been very lethargic. As a result, for the last 3 months, elephants have been roaming freely in residential and agricultural areas with no meaningful intervention by KWS. Honorable Speaker, the school attendance has dropped almost by half in schools like Migujini, Midoina, Jira, Rimarapera, Mitangani, and Mlagoni primary schools owing to these menace, and as it is too risky for students to walk to school, even those who attend school classes start late in the morning and close early to enable students to be home before dusk. Honorable Speaker, a number of lives have also been lost as a result of this menace. 2 persons, namely Safari Luganje Kaviha of ID number 20902603 from Makolongoni village, Mwangea sublocation, Mwahera location, and Kalume Tambo Karisa of ID 28611788 from Kaziweni village, Mariango sublocation, Bamba location, were killed by stray elephants on the 27th and 28th July this year, respectively. Honorable Speaker, it is against this backdrop that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Tourism and Wildlife on the following. 1. Could the chairperson state the measures that the ministry is taking to ensure that the herds of elephants are returned back to the Tsavo or other conservation areas? 2. Could the chairperson state how soon KWS will compensate all those whose farms and crops were destroyed and the families of those who lost their loved ones? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, report on the United Nations Convention Against Corruption and Global Parliamentarians Against Corruption meeting.
Leader of delegation, Honorable Shakil Shabir, you may proceed to move your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, between the 8th and 9th of March, this Parliament, through your wisdom, sent a delegation from APNAC to the 2022-23 Parliamentary Dialogue.
Can you give the member the mic? Okay, go on.
Sorry. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move the motion under item 8, the report on the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, and the Global Parliamentarians Against Corruption GOPAC meeting in March 2023 held in Doha. I beg to move this report.
No, I beg to move the following motion.
Yes, sorry, beg your
Then
pardon.
read the motion as it is.
Yes, sir.
Then start telling the House what it is all about.
I beg to move this motion
Okay.
as it is.
No. Read the motion as it is on the order paper. Give him the mic.
I got it.
I beg
So-
to move
sorry,
the
Mr.
following
Speaker,
motion.
sir.
Yes.
I beg to move the motion that this House notes the report of the Kenya delegation to the Parliamentary Dialogue on United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, and the Global Parliamentarians Against Corruption Annual General Meeting held in Doha, Qatar, from the 8th to the 9th of March 2023, as laid on the table of this House on Wednesday, 26th of April, 2023, sir.
Excellent. Now proceed to elucidate your facts.
Thank you, your Speaker, sir. I should have known that. I beg your apologies of my colleagues. Mr. Speaker, sir, the world over, the cancer of corruption has been exponentially spread in developing countries with devastating socio-economic and governance consequences. It persists in developing countries despite the proliferation of legal and institutional and other measures that have been put into place to fight corruption. In mitigation, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption was initiated in 2003 and has been recognized as a reference framework for the fight against corruption. Mr. Speaker, sir, Kenya was one of the first countries who signed this convention. The United Nations Convention Against Corruption implementation requires the participation of political stakeholders such as GOPAC and APNAC and reflects the conviction of the state parties that the anti-corruption measures should be embedded and coordinated in policies instead of being carried out in isolation or in an ad hoc manner. It is against this background of the 2023 Doha Dialogue was organized to address the underlining issues of Parliament and parliamentarians' engagement with the UNCAC. The event drew a strong focus on implementation and good practices to address corruption by parliamentarians, especially GOPAC and APNAC parliamentarians. It was the following observations were raised: that the implementation of the UNCAC's provisions are weak, that the international cooperation at best, especially with regard to money laundering, asset recovery, asset declaration, and beneficial ownership, is also weak, that the funding of the major anti-corruption activities in developing countries is weak and inconsistent, that the restrictions on the participation of civil societies and media are increasing, that APNAC Kenya was applauded for the pace-setting activities carried out to strengthen the capacity of Kenyan parliamentarians and the executive institutions to prevent corruption and prevent and combat corruption. In this regard, the Speaker of the National Assembly was congratulated and awarded a prestigious award in honor of his efforts to unite Kenya legislators against corruption. Mr. Speaker, sir, APNAC, which is African Parliamentarians Against Corruption, is one of the oldest caucuses in Parliament since 1999, and we have a number of parliamentarians who are members, and we feel very strongly that every parliamentarian has a desire to fight corruption, and we welcome their initiatives. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is time for the international community to seriously explore establishing a permanent anti-corruption council similar to that of the Human Rights Council at the United Nations. Mr. Speaker, sir, the leadership of Kenya is urged to strengthen the initiatives and activities that promote ethical values, integrity, transparency, good governance, and patriotism, enforcing them in the education framework to develop the mindset and attitudes of Kenyans, especially school-going children and youth. Mr. Speaker, as adopting the Republic of Rwanda model, the Kenya members of Parliament who have actually headed this fight against corruption in the whole of Africa and should have the capacity and enhanced through regular training in sessions and in collaboration with the Ombudsman Office and the Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority. Mr. Speaker, sir, members of APNAC have been facilitated through your good office to promote transparency and accountability and good governance among not only parliamentarians among themselves, but at the national and international level. APNAC Kenya chapter engages as many parliamentarians as possible, and as I said, all members of parliament are our members. We have 30 or so active members. APNAC Kenya should expand its activities to include promotional cultural and Christian and Muslim values to enforce them in the mindset. The parliamentary leadership at the office of the Honorable Speaker should promote the role of parliamentarians and other legislative bodies in the management of public financing. There is need to work harder to demonstrate that parliamentarian oversight is needed during the outside emergency crisis. And the Kenyan Parliament was actually applauded for the work that they have done in APNAC. Mr. Speaker, sir, the members who went to this particular workshop, who attended the workshop and represented the Parliament so well were myself as the leader of the delegation. We had Mr. Bernard Kitur as one of the members, and a third member, which the name where is it? I've lost that particular. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, the long and short of this is that APNAC is a strong caucus of Parliament, and we plead with members of Parliament to support us in all our activities, both within Parliament and nationally. Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleague, Honorable Nyekal, to second me in this motion.
Honorable Nyekal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support that the House notes the report of this team, this delegation.
For purposes of record, you rise to second the motion, not to support.
Stand corrected. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second this motion that the House notes the report of this delegation. Mr. Speaker, in this country, the two biggest enemies we have are actually corruption and nepotism, that we often call tribalism in the common parlance. Mr. Speaker, that we have a body of parliamentarians.
Order, honorable members, the conversations are far too loud. We can barely hear what the distinguished member for Seme is saying.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to second this motion that this House notes the report of this delegation because, Mr. Speaker, in this country, corruption and tribalism are the biggest enemies that if we can conquer them, this country will fly in all terms, economic development and all forms of growth. That we have a group of parliamentarians that have come as a caucus to fight this is commendable. That this delegation went to an international meeting, workshop, and what were noted, Mr. Speaker, is actually interesting and it's important for us to note that actually from the workshop they noted that the corruption is increasing, that the implementation of the international conventions are weak, that the international cooperation against corruption is especially weak and is not supported in areas such as money laundering, asset recovery, asset declaration, and beneficial ownership, which are extremely important in fighting corruption. It doesn't matter how people are taken to court and charged. If the proceeds of corruption are not dealt with, if the processes like money laundering are not dealt with, if the assets that they enjoy are not dealt with, will not go far. Mr. Speaker, it was also important, it was noted in this workshop that the activities of the civil society on corruption is actually weak. This is interesting if we look at how active the civil societies are when they're talking about human rights, if they're talking about transitions of government and so on. So that is an interesting. Mr. Speaker, in this workshop, they actually noted that Kenyan Parliament has done a lot, particularly under your leadership, to strengthen this caucus of parliamentarians. Mr. Speaker, with all that, one would expect that actually we will be leading in fighting corruption. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we should not only note the contents of this report, we should actually move and work and bring even motions to actually strengthen this. And therefore, I support even the recommendations that all the activities we have in Parliament, starting from the budget, going to audit, and in our committees, we can actually fight corruption. And Mr. Speaker, it is time that we also pushed internationally that corruption is fought in the same way that we fight human rights violations. We should even have an international court actually dedicated to corruption. And Mr. Speaker, if we mention Rwanda as a country, this is one of our East African states within our region, and if we can come up in this country and actually mention that, what stops us from emulating what is happening there and actually fighting corruption? So, Mr. Speaker, I support this report, and I think as members of Parliament, it is upon us, it behoves us, that all the ills we fight in this country, the one that we should put our effort on most is actually corruption. With that, Mr. Speaker, I second.
Thank you, Honorable Nyikal. Order, honorable members, I now propose the question, which is that this House notes the report of the Kenya delegation to the Parliamentary Dialogue on United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, and Global Parliamentarians Against Corruption, GOPAC, annual general meeting held in Doha, Qatar, from 8th to 9th March 2023, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 26th April 2023. Yes, Honorable Ichungwa.
No, Honorable Speaker, and I'm sorry to raise this now. But Honorable Speaker, you notice when you are up on your feet, there are members who are standing and conversing in very, very loudly, Honorable Speaker. And Speaker, I also noticed last week, I think we are now making the National Assembly look like a village marketplace, not even a marketplace, because there are some markets that are very decent, people are also quiet. When members speak to stand, Honorable Speaker, there are members who have made it a habit of heckling and shouting and never allowing other members to speak. Honorable Speaker, now what worries me is that you are on your feet and there's a group of members conversing in vernacular behind here. Another group at the corner there also conversing very loudly and we can hardly hear you. Honorable Speaker, I just want to ask you and the chairs who sit on your seat when you are not, the substantive speaker is not on his seat, that we exercise firmness in how we transact business on the floor of the House, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if you noticed last week on Thursday or Wednesday, I think it was on Thursday, when we had the adjournment motion, the Honorable Rosa Buyu rose from her seat where the Honorable Karoli Omondi is seated today and walked to the front menacingly. Fortunately, I am not Sabina Sheke. I could not stop from saying what I was saying. But there are members, Honorable Speaker, who will not have the courage to continue speaking. And you see, when people shout at you when you are speaking, people tend to lose their trail of thought, and members get derailed from being able to debate. And we must make this house a house of debate. It is very embarrassing when you cut out your name in this house, Honorable Speaker, that the best thing you can do is open your mouth, shout, and heckle at each other. It's an embarrassment to the people who have elected you, that they elected you to come to a debating house, a debating chamber to debate, and they chose you amongst many other Kenyans who are vying for that position. So I just want, and I don't want to name names, Honorable Speaker, but they are known. Those who have made it a habit of heckling, shouting, they are those who hold that trophy in this house. Honorable Speaker, it's also unfortunate that they are learning, some of our new members are learning from veterans of the House, members who have been here for a long time. I struggle, Honorable Speaker, when members on this side, when the leader, for instance, is speaking, and you bear me witness, there are members who are tempted to shout him down, and I told them to allow him to say what he has to say. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I just wanted to beg that you help us to restore the dignity of this house, because every day it is sinking to new lows. And it is sad when it is members who are making us look like we are in a marketplace. Honorable Speaker, it worries me now that it has begun with when members are speaking. Now, even when the Speaker is on his feet, members are still standing, walking around and conversing. And it is not fair, Honorable Speaker, not to you, but to the dignity and honor of this House. Honorable Speaker, I just wanted to beg that you also implore on the Speaker's panel members to be firm. There is no reason why a member should rise from their place to go and attempt to stop the Honorable Pio Andai from criticizing government because he is the leader of minority and that is his work. He has no other work. The same with me. I have no other work but to push government business on the floor of this house. And whether you like my voice, whether you like my looks, whether you like what I am saying, hold your horses. You don't have to like me. And you don't even need to like what I am saying or what the Honorable Pio and I is saying or what I particularly never like anything Robert Mbui says. But I allow him to say it and I will have the time to respond. Honorable Speaker, I just want to beg that we restore the dignity and honor of the people who have elected us to come and represent them. I don't think there is any Kenyan who elected a member of parliament to come to the house and heckle other members. There are places to heckle in markets and bars and other places. If you want to mourn, you can go mourn in funerals. Not here, Honorable Speaker. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg that you do guide the House and guide the chairs of the Speaker's panel not to tolerate. I particularly liked what you did, the action you took against a number of members on the incident between Sabina Chege and a few members. But Honorable Speaker, I would beg that that becomes the norm, not the exception now, so that we restore the dignity and respect for each other and also respect for the House, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable, that should not elicit debate. I just want to echo what the majority leader said. For the first time last week, I sat in my chamber and watched with horror as a member who I had given the privilege to move a motion of adjournment literally made it impossible for members to debate her own motion. That is a very strange happening. I've also noted, regrettably, members who just walk across the aisle as if they don't know the standing orders, members who stand on end, conversing very loudly. Under our Constitution, there are two official languages, English and Kiswahili. So when you enter this chamber, you cease being a member of your ethnic community. You become a member of the National Assembly of Kenya, and your duty is to correspond in this house in only two languages, English and Kiswahili. That's why you see your speaker, who is acknowledged to be a good speaker of English and good English, prays in this house in Kiswahili to demonstrate that that is our alternative language in this country. So I want to beseech you members. You know, in the old days in African societies, errant behavior was largely the preserve of men. Regrettably, in this house, errant behavior is being the preserve of our good ladies. It is very embarrassing. I don't want to name any names, but I sat in horror to see members standing from where they sit and rushing to the dispatch table, rushing to the clerks, menacing other members. And I liked what the minority leader responded to one of the members. He said, "Your menacing behavior will not stop me from making my point." And he made his point, and it went down very well. Honorable members, you carry the dignity of the people who elected you. Even if you don't respect yourself, respect those who elected you, because they gave you an opportunity to carry a title honorable. And if you are honorable and you behave in a dishonorable manner, then you don't deserve the opportunity you have been given by the good people of this country. Your right to speak must correspond with your duty to listen. That's what debate is all about. And I want to hope that moving forward, the majority leader, minority leader, rein in your troops. I know that politics sometimes makes people take leave of their senses, depending on certain situations. But that should be a rare exception in your life. You can imagine those children in the galleries seeing you, who is old enough to be their mother, or their father, or their brother, or their sister, behaving in a manner that is so erratic that nobody expects that behavior from you. Let's keep the dignity of this house. Those who want to converse, and nobody will stop you from talking in your mother tongue. There are very many allies out there you can go and discuss, finish, and come back. But let's keep this house in good order. Thank you. The screen is full. I don't know if it is about this motion. Victor Koech. If you are on the screen and you do not want to speak on this motion, you surrender the opportunity to somebody else.
I surrender.
Honorable Wandai. Wandai, before you speak, allow me to acknowledge the schools in the galleries. In the Speaker's Gallery, we have Pleasant View Senior Girls Secondary School from Githunguri, Kiambu. We have Mwala Girls High School, Mwala, Machakos. And we have Mirbera or Mirzera High School, Naivasha, Nakuru. Members, on your behalf and on my own behalf, I welcome the students and their teachers of the House of Parliament. And Wandai, on behalf of the House, as you start contributing, you can welcome the schools.
Honorable Speaker, let me also join you in welcoming the students from the various schools who are sitting in the galleries of Parliament. Wish them a fruitful tour of the House of Parliament and hope that they will take home some learnings at the end of this rare tour that they're making. Mr. Speaker, I will be contributing shortly on this issue, but I want to agree with you and the Honorable Chungwa on what you've just said. The need for order in the House can never be overemphasized, really. And on a lighter note, Mr. Speaker, last Thursday, I think Thursday, yes, that same day, was the first time I saw when a quorum bell was being rung. I want the Speaker to listen to me, Honorable Wamboka. Mr. Speaker, for the first time in my history in this Parliament, I saw when the quorum bell was being rung, members trooping out of the chambers. Instead of trooping back to the chambers. It is something that's never been witnessed in the history of this Parliament for as long as I've been here. Until the benches on the majority side became empty, totally empty. Of course, as a way of frustrating the debate on the motion. Yeah, but that's something we need to deal with in future, because again, it's standing orders. Mr. Speaker, let me support this motion. The motion on the report of the delegation, okay, that went to this meeting in Doha, Qatar. The delegation of members of APNAC. APNAC, for members who don't know, is the African Parliamentary Network Against Corruption. Mr. Speaker, I must confess that I've been a very active member of APNAC, at least until this Parliament. And I had an occasion in the 11th Parliament to represent APNAC Kenya at a meeting in Chad. I remember that time. Yeah. And one of the things I must acknowledge is that APNAC, just like other caucuses that deal with the matter of corruption, is a very important entity. And I must thank the chairman The Honorable Shakil Shabir has been chairman now for quite some time. The fight against corruption requires not only goodwill, but demonstrable actions from the leadership of the country. And this House comprises of people who are at the apex of the leadership of this country. And therefore, if we take up the matter of the fight against corruption head on and more seriously, I am sure the whole country can take cue. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want APNAC now to move from talk to action. From talk to action. And the fight against corruption must start with action from ourselves as leadership of the country. We can no longer just be talking about the fight against corruption as a pastime. We must demonstrate not only to the country but to the whole world that Kenyan parliamentarians truly believe in the fight against corruption. Truly believe in the fight against corruption. I must acknowledge that at least for the 10 or so months, this now 10 months I think, since this parliament began, we haven't had cases of members being hauled to courtrooms on matters of corruption. I know, of course, in the past one would argue that corruption charges were being used as a political tool. Be that as it may, whenever members of parliament are hauled to courtrooms on charges of corruption, it sends very, very bad signals to the country. That those who should be at the forefront in fighting corruption are the ones who are being accused of being involved in corruption. And this House has got the capacity and indeed obligation to compel the executive to also take a lead in the fight against corruption. So what am I saying in short? That APNAC requires support, but even to support it, it will be important for members, all members of parliament, if possible, to join in APNAC as active members, to demonstrate our faith in APNAC, but also to show the whole world that the Kenyan parliamentarians really believe in the fight against corruption. Because corruption remains one of the single biggest threats to the existence of this country. Corruption is a cancer that, if not checked, if not tackled, can actually eat the entire fabric of the nation. The entire fabric of the nation. So I want to commend the chairman of APNAC, my good friend Honorable Shakil Shabir, and members of APNAC who are active, and indeed the membership of GOPAC, that is the Global Parliamentarians Against Corruption, to which we belong as APNAC Kenya. And indeed I'm being told that the Honorable Shakil Shabir is a member of the board of GOPAC. Mr. Speaker, or Madam Speaker now, sorry. Madam Speaker, in the 12th Parliament, when I was the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, I was also privileged to be the Secretary General of the African Organization of Public Accounts Committees, AFROPAC, which also has similar objectives as APNAC in the fight against corruption. So I would want to encourage members of parliament and my colleagues to please enlist yourselves in these caucuses, in these organizations that deal with corruption, so that at least the whole country and the whole world can know that Kenyan parliamentarians are serious with the fight against corruption. As I conclude, you know, corruption in this country is budgeted for a long time. Corruption in this country is budgeted for a long time. How I wish that culture of budgeted corruption comes to a stop, comes to an end. We have got enough resources in this country that can take care of all our needs if only we dealt with the pilferage and wanton misuse of resources. by those who are charged with the responsibility of taking care of these resources on behalf of the people of Kenya. Wastage, pilferage is one of the biggest issues that we face as a country. If you are keen enough and you happen to read any report of the Public Accounts Committee, you will notice that those state departments, those agencies, those commissions that deal with matters of project procurement are where corruption is domiciled. Corruption follows budget. Once you budget for projects and you don't deal with the matter of budgeted corruption, you will be breeding corruption. It is quite clear. Those agencies, those departments of state that have got little or no budget for capital projects, you will rarely see any case of corruption. But where there are projects to be procured, that is the home of corruption. And therefore, I will be appealing to my colleagues that let us lead by example on this front. Thank you. I support.
Let me recognize the schools first, then you'll go. I wish to recognize in the public gallery the following schools: Tongoya Secondary School from Mwea constituency, Kirinyaga County; Father Khan Academy from Chesumei constituency, Nandi County; Londiani Girls High School from Kipkelion East constituency, Kericho County; Made in the Streets Primary School from Kasarani constituency, Nairobi County. Welcome. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, let me begin by thanking the Honorable Shakir Shabir for tabling this report and ably moving for its adoption. Honorable Speaker, as the Honorable Leader of Minority has noted, the Honorable Shakir has been leading APNAC and GOPAC for a very long time. And I want to encourage the Honorable Shakir Shabir to now enlist. In fact, I was asking him who is seconding the motion, and I had hoped that he would get one of our new members, but he told me he had asked the Honorable Bernard Kitur to second. Unfortunately, I think the Honorable Bernard Kitur was too busy elsewhere, so he was not available. But I was encouraging Honorable Shakir to enlist more of the new members into these organizations, both APNAC and GOPAC. And also to encourage, Honorable Speaker, the institutionalization of all these setups, both APNAC and GOPAC, and also the parliamentary network on the World Bank, and also the parliamentarians for global action. And Honorable Speaker, to also have bicameral representation as we institutionalize all these associations, so that being that we are in a bicameral parliament, when we attend all these international conferences, we don't do so as the National Assembly, but we attend as the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya. So that whatever resolutions that come out of all these associations, whether it's APNAC, whether it's GOPAC, whether it's a parliamentary network for global action on World Bank, we have a bicameral approach, so that if there are legislative interventions to be done, you find it much easier for the Honorable Shakir to propose any legislative proposals on matters to do with corruption and other issues if there is bicameral representation in all these organizations. And I would really want to encourage the Honorable Shakir, even as I commend him for the work, to ensure that we institutionalize all these organizations and have that bicameral approach. Honorable Speaker, if you read through the report, Honorable Speaker, you will see the various recommendations that they are making, and especially on facilitating APNAC to be able to promote transparency, accountability, and good governance among us parliamentarians, both at a national level and also at our county levels or even community leaders, Honorable Speaker. And I cannot agree more with the members of this organization that we must have a very clear framework on how, as Parliament, we will promote transparency and accountability. Honorable Speaker, it is in view of such desires that the National Assembly and the Senate, under this administration, were able to review our own standing orders to allow cabinet secretaries to appear before the House, as they will do tomorrow afternoon on Wednesdays, to come and be accountable to the people through their elected representatives. But Honorable Speaker, you notice few of us actively participate in that process, and I want to take this opportunity to encourage members, as I did on Thursday during the normal statement on behalf of the House Business Committee, to, one, enlist questions that we enhance transparency in how government does its work in the ministries, and also, more importantly, to hold cabinet secretaries and those serving in the executive accountable of all their actions, and even in the implementation of the budgets that we appropriate here and we pass, but whose implementation we leave to the executive. Honorable Speaker, that being so, it must not be lost on us that we cannot just be talking about corruption. And I'm happy, Honorable Speaker, that we have an administration now that does not only speak about corruption, but acts on corruption and any incidences of corruption. And I think Kenyans will bear us witness that the President has been very resolute to speak less and act more on issues to do with corruption. And that is how to deal with corruption. In the past, Honorable Speaker, we have seen incidences where from the highest office, and I remember in 2018 or 2017, Honorable Speaker, during the State of the Nation address, where a whole 200 members of the cabinet, civil servants, were asked to step aside on suspicion of matters to do with corruption. But of all those 200 public officers that were asked to step aside, not a single officer was ever charged in court over corruption. Because we had a regime that believed in speaking about corruption and never acting on corruption. And it was no coincidence, Honorable Speaker, when you find people speaking too much about corruption, at times, they are the most corrupt people. Those who shout loudest about fighting corruption are usually the most corrupt, Honorable Speaker. And I think Kenyans would bear us witness also that indeed, from the activities of the last regime with state capture, the highest form of corruption is state capture. And I know the Honorable Karoli Omondi has a motion on establishment of a state capture commission. And I want to encourage the Honorable Karoli Omondi to aggressively pursue that motion so that we have a state capture commission that is the beginning of dealing with matters to do with corruption. Honorable Speaker, we keep talking about corruption when we see police officers collecting bribes on the roads, or county government officers walking around their estates collecting bribes. But we forget that the fish, as we say, starts rotting from the head. That is a problem in Kenya. The country started rotting from the head when we made state capture normal. We normalized state capture. And it became normal that 1 or 2 or 3 people and their families could capture the state and ensure, from public procurement to implementation of government projects to formulation of government policy, is geared towards private business interests, not the greater public good. Honorable Speaker, that is where we must begin, and I want to encourage the Honorable Shakir Shabir, even within GOPAC and ACPAC, to ensure, because this is not a problem that is unique to Kenya. The world over, even in the most developed countries, states are captured by those who are in power. But we have a duty and a responsibility as parliamentarians to support such organizations to ensure that we do not normalize corruption by normalizing state capture, Honorable Speaker. And that's why I said I must commend President William Ruto, because he has shown by action how you deal with corruption. You don't issue ultimatums. You don't threaten people. You don't need to bang tables. You just need to act on corruption, and the message will be sent to public officers that there is zero tolerance to corruption, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, as I encourage the Honorable Shabir and members of this caucus, Honorable Speaker, I also want to ask them to lead from the front. Right from our committees in Parliament. For many years, and Honorable Shakir has been here with me long enough to know members of Parliament serving in committees quite often are accused of rent seeking. To also ensure that we enlist as many members into this organization so that when we talk about the fight against corruption, we are not just talking, but it is something we are practicing even within our own ranks, right from our constituencies to our parliamentary committees, and even in the manner in which we oversight government and those in the executive. Honorable Speaker, with those very many remarks, I beg to support, but in conclusion, let me re-emphasize the need to institutionalize all these organizations and to make sure that there is a bicameral approach in their constitution, and to also make sure that the Honorable Shakir, you also don't lead these organizations, all of them together. It is time to encourage the likes of the Honorable Kitur to take up the leadership of another, encourage one of the young senators in the Senate to take up leadership of another, but also these organizations allow also democracy to thrive so that we don't get, in quotes, Mugabe's leading these organizations. You allow the election of members and the leadership of all these organizations and caucuses.
Honorable Member Ricadiri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am a member of APNAC, the Organization on Parliamentarians Against Corruption. I've had a basic training and experience in China. I've had experience even in a Kenya situation. Madam Speaker, when we talk about corruption, we are not talking about stealing money. We are also talking about systems and procedures that are applied by people who practice corruption. One of our shortcomings, because we must admit, is, Madam Speaker, we are focused on the national government and the quasi-government institution when we are talking about corruption in this country. We have left the county government from the blanket of areas of focus as APNAC. I am asking our chairman and the committee that now we take this institution to the county assemblies. That way, we will be addressing the issue of corruption at the national level and also at the county level. Madam Speaker, we cannot pretend that corruption also is within the government institutions. Far from the truth. We have a lot of corruption activities even in the private sector. But because of democracy and limitations of boundaries, it becomes very difficult for us to aggressively, as a parliament, to focus on private enterprises who participate in areas of corruption. Madam Speaker, in every government institution where tendering and business is done, you always find a private practitioner by way of an engineer, a lawyer, an accountant, a supplier, etc., etc. Madam Speaker, corruption is a serious demon. It actually operates within the lives of even the church organizations. Because that's why Chakawala is there. So, Madam Speaker, as element of corruption and fighters of corruption, I agree with the views of majority that we need to take this institution at a higher level. Madam Speaker, I am the president of Democracy and Good Governance of the 12 Great Lake countries. And you are going to find one of the problems that we are experiencing is corruption at the international level, being executed by international operators, selling and bringing firearms, trying to interfere with the democracies of African countries. So we are dealing with a very big animal, but it's upon us. I believe the Kenya Parliament has the capacity to move and propagate for serious policies that will help govern the institutions against corruption. I therefore, Madam Speaker, support the report, but I say giving out a report in Parliament is not the best solution to the problem. It's how we are going to implement this report. And I join to say, I think, Senior Shakil, you have done a great work for the many years that you have been there. We ask you to start now creating succession so that now we can have other people have the opportunity of moving with this. Perhaps our speed of moving is not like these other young guys. They can, and they should be given an opportunity. So I thank you, Shakil. I thank Madam Speaker. I support this report, but the implementation is the key thing. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Kandui, John Makali. Then we'll come to you, Beatrice Elachi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this report that has been brought by our senior parliamentarian, the Honorable Shakil Shabir. Before I make my remarks on this motion, permit me, Madam Speaker, to congratulate you for turning up in my constituency to encourage the learners and the parents on our Education Day. They actually mandated me to say thank you, and welcome again. To the report, I must thank again the committee, the APNAC committee, for this particular report. We must all agree, Madam Speaker, that corruption is a vice that has destroyed economies, has destroyed families, has destroyed countries, and there must be a concerted effort to fight it from all fronts. From the report, it is clear that this APNAC is constituted of parliamentarians. And as we all know, Madam Speaker, parliamentarians are the representatives of the people. They exercise delegated power, and they have a good forum in which to can be able to champion the fight against corruption. I have looked at the recommendations of the report, and it is heartening, Madam Speaker, from the report that this House, through its Speaker, has been congratulated for taking a front line in the fight against corruption. But as we speak, Madam Speaker, we are not sure about the legal framework that APNAC operates under. I know it is African Parliamentarians Against Corruption, but Madam Speaker, we need to come up with a legislative framework borrowed from APNAC Africa that will be able to champion the fight against corruption from our end. As a new member in this particular House, I will take the gauntlet that has been thrown at our feet, that I will immediately after this, Madam Speaker, enroll in this particular committee so that we can be able to champion the fight against corruption. As has been indicated, there is a lot of corruption that has actually been devolved from the national level to the counties. We need also to have similar organizations at the counties that will be able to fight corruption
in the counties, because we realize a lot of corruption networks are undertaken at the counties, specifically through procurement schemes at the county level. Equally, we must be able to partner with other key players, and specifically the civil society. This is a multifaceted approach, and civil society plays a very, very critical role in spreading awareness and sensitization of our people of the woes of corruption. And this house can play a pioneering role in ensuring that we sensitize our people. Equally, the issue of facilitation and funding. I'm very sure that this committee will not have gone to Doha if this honorable house had not facilitated or funds had not been set aside for it. This fight requires all of us. And in this fight, we require funding and facilitation to be able to explore all the new forms of corruption that are coming up and mutating in various forms. We need also to look at our structures which we have put in place, specifically the anti-corruption, the economic crimes, the anti-corruption, the Economic Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. The efforts that have been put towards it is towards investigation and prosecution. But we need to indicate another area that has not been critically emphasized, and this is the area of ethics. This is ethics and values. We need, as we push legislation in this house, strengthen the institutions that are there to fight corruption, but split it up also to our institutions of learning, specifically our schools, so that we can inculcate ethics in our learners. With those remarks, Madam Speaker, I wish to support the report and wish all the best for the team. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Dagoretti North, Honourable Beauty Selachi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support the report and to appreciate Honourable Shabir, and to really start by saying this, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, sorry. Madam Speaker, today I see young people, they were running all over to register for WorldCoin. And I was asking myself, when I saw the live, all these young Kenyans, really, even if we are talking about corruption today, one of the corruption we should be talking about is how people manipulate and influence to lie, to steal from our own people in terms of different projects that you even wonder, how did this start? How are they given even approvals to be able to start such a thing? And then in the end, Kenyans will just start again crying, the way I'm seeing them crying in the US. An agency decided to take you there. Today you're homeless, you're on the streets. It's in Canada. And I think this is where we have to, when we are talking about corruption, Madam Speaker, in Kenya, I think the first thing we should be asking ourselves is, how do you get approvals? Look at just how we are. Forget about even the things we're saying, oh, it's in the budget. It is in our mind, how we think, Madam Speaker, how we do our stuff, how we just start the designing of that paper, tells you where the paper is headed, how it is going to affect us, but we still continue. And so as much as we are talking about it in Parliament, as much as we have this group, we have open governments, and I want to really thank P.S. Singoe. He has been very steadfast on open governments, and I really want to call upon the counties that are in open government, Nandi, Elgeyo Marakwet. Let's join him in pushing this agenda also in terms of looking at open governments for governments and how transparent governments must work. But having said that, in this country, when you want to take anything of government, it is the easiest thing to do. And I always say, it is not about how you run the ministry. It's not about the CS or the PS. But, Speaker, if you don't start with the officers who start designing the project that is supposed to be done by government, that is where that corruption starts. Until the day we look at it, until the day we accept that indeed we need to come up with a law in this house so that the lobbyists who are doing these projects are given a percentage. Either it's 5% of the project, 10%. I think 10 will be very high, Madam Speaker. But I think 5 or 2.5% can be very good for everyone who runs around with that project to be paid within, so that it becomes something that is very open, and then you stop this thing of now people going down, what is in it for me? So before even you start a project, someone is asking for 10%, and you're wondering, so how will the project indeed move? Will the project be a project that is commensable, or will the project be a project that will last? Look at our airport, Madam Speaker. A project that was done of tens when when the airport got burnt. To date, we are still in the tens. It is our international arrivals. The money that was spent to done the tents is more than 2 billion shillings doing a tent. We are here, now we've come in. The only thing we can do, Madam Speaker, is to plead with CS Murkomen to save us now from that grey thing that we always see when we enter our airport, which was done very wrongly, which was spent a lot of money that would have just built a good thing. You ask yourself, why can't you just build something that can last for 50 years and then do maintenance if we have to have all this eating, Madam Speaker? So, Madam Speaker, it is us as Kenyans, we cannot be benchmarking all over, but we can't do the right thing, Madam Speaker. I plead with this House, let us push those who are doing our projects in this country with huge monies to do something that will be there for generations to come. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I beg to support the report.
The Honourable Member for Marakwet West, Timothy Toroitich. Give him the mic.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute on this substantive motion, that is a report on the United Nations Convention Against Corruption and Global Parliamentarians Against Corruption meeting. Madam Speaker, corruption in this country is a menace. For this country to progress, we must find a decisive way of dealing with corruption. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the mover on the motion, my friend Honorable Shakil, for bringing this motion before the floor of the House. Madam Speaker, I wish to bring to the attention of this House that on the 28th day of July 2023, Professor Nixon Sifuna, sitting as a judge at the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Division in the High Court, made a substantive ruling, Madam Speaker, against corruption that it should not escape this House. Madam Speaker, the judge, Honorable Sifuna, pursuant to Section 92 of the POCAMLA Act, that is the Proceedings of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act, number 92, 2009, Madam Speaker, made a substantive and unprecedented ruling to the effect that money that has been obtained out of the process of crime that initially was deposited in the Assets Recovery Agency bank account shall now be deposited in the Consolidated Fund account. Madam Speaker, the substance of that ruling is that any amount that has been forfeited by a court of law and initially was deposited in the Assets Recovery Agency Fund account shall now be deposited in the Consolidated Fund account. Madam Speaker, in my opinion, this is a good ruling because initially there is a misconception or there is a belief that money deposited to this agency account has been misappropriated. Madam Speaker, and I call upon the National Treasury because we have the substantive act, but Madam Speaker, we lack the regulations. We have, just a minute, Madam Speaker. We call upon the National Treasury to submit regulations to operationalize the Criminal Recovery Fund, so that once that fund has been created by this House, then money that has been forfeited by a court of law, being proceeds of corruption, shall be deposited to that recovery fund. Madam Speaker, as we speak, the money that is recovered out of the proceeds of crime is deposited in a bank account opened by the agency. As to how that money is mismanaged, Madam Speaker, is not very clear. So, Madam Speaker, I call upon the National Treasury and the committee of this House dealing with delegated legislation to make sure that that particular regulation is brought in this House so that we have the asset recovery fund account created under regulations, so that money that has been forfeited by a court of law, being proceeds of crime, is deposited into that particular account. In my opinion, Madam Speaker, if that fund account is created, then monies that has been forfeited by a court of law shall not be misappropriated by that particular agency. So, Madam Speaker, I beg to submit on that issue, and I fully support this motion, particularly on the creation of that fund account. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I wish to recognize the presence in the Speaker's Gallery of Garrison Secondary School, Gilgil Constituency, Nakuru County. I also wish to recognize in the public gallery Londiani Township Secondary School from Kipkelion East Constituency, Kericho County, and Londiani Girls High School, Kipkelion East, Kericho County, and Mahindu Primary and Junior Secondary School, Kipipiri, Nyandarua County. On that note, I call upon the Honorable Cherorot Joseph, member for Kipkelion East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this chance to welcome all the students who managed to attend our parliament today. And I want to encourage them that while they are here, they have to learn also the functions of the parliament, and they are most welcome anytime. More so, Madam Speaker, I want to welcome Londiani Girls Secondary School and Londiani Township, who come from my constituency. They are welcome here in Nairobi, and I want to congratulate Londiani Girls because they were the leading in my constituency during the last year exams. They had 6.63, and also Londiani Township also performed well. I want to say that, Madam Speaker, for all those students who have come here, that education is an equalizer. It actually brings together children from the poor family and those from the dynasties. They can sit together in this class and perform. And I want to say that it is also a life-changing. It can change the life of a person and improve their life. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. Asante.
Okay, the Honorable Member for Elgeyo Marakwet County, Honorable Ngeleche.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support the report by Honorable Shakil. Madam Speaker, at times in this country, we need such bold leaders to speak out and participate in issues that are really affecting us. Madam Speaker, many a times in this country, find that we struggle maybe a lot in vain in so many areas, because the more steps we make forward, you find that issues of corruption take us back double the steps. Madam Speaker, at times we don't even need to toil so much, but we just need to kill the monster that is called corruption. Madam Speaker, you find that we do a lot in this country. We work extra hard. But if we adopt the issue of fighting corruption, we will work a little smart and still achieve the objectives. Madam Speaker, I just want to urge Honorable Shakil that please encourage more members to join your caucus so that when we have many leaders leading in the fight against corruption, it is better off than having 1, 2, or 3 that participate in the same. Madam Speaker, there are so many wastage in this country as a result of corruption. And especially nowadays when people who are involved in corruption rush to maybe courts of law to bar themselves from being investigated or from the investigating agency from proceeding, you find that so many projects, even from that are done by members of parliament on CDF and other funds, are stalled and money is wasted. Like we have a project in Elgeyo Marakwet, in Marakwet West, that has been lying low for several years, pending investigations. Well, Madam Speaker, if that project, were it not for corruption issue, that project could have benefited thousands of children and the people of Elgeyo Marakwet at large. So, Madam Speaker, I stand to support the report by Honorable Shakil, and I urge other members in this House to make a step to Honorable Shakil and make sure that they also participate in the same, that they also be part of members of parliament on record that will fight corruption. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable, let's see. Yes, I can see her at the top of the page. Yeah, the Honorable Member for Endebess, Dr. Robert Kose.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to contribute this motion. On the onset, I want to declare that I'm a member of ABNAC, and ABNAC is not just an organization of members of parliament who are sitting, but we also have former members of parliament who are members of ABNAC, like the Honorable Musikari Kombo, whom I want to recognize, is a member of ABNAC. I also want to thank my chair, the Honorable Shakil Shabir, for the good work he's been doing in ABNAC. He's been a long-time serving chair of the ABNAC since the 11th Parliament when I knew him, together in the 12th Parliament and now in the 13th Parliament. He's still been our chair. Honorable Shakil has steered this caucus very well, and we can credibly say that ABNAC is a very resourceful organization that the honorable members of this House can be able to get capacitated or capacity building in terms of providing better oversight to the various institutions. Honorable Speaker, matters corruption are not just in terms of not just in terms of stealing. There are also corruption in terms of how we lead the various organizations. There is moral corruption in terms of how do we even organize our parties. There is moral corruption in terms of how do we engage with each other. Honorable Speaker, I want to support the President in the efforts in which he's putting up in fighting corruption. One of them is where beginning today, the President has said all the M-Pesa agents should go into only one M-Pesa account, which is monitored by Treasury. That implies that all the other M-Pesa accounts giving government services ceases from today, and we'll only have one. I think that's a very big effort in the right direction. This morning in State House, the President made a commitment when the cabinet secretaries were signing the performance contracting, and we expect that they'll be able to live and deliver on those services. Kwanza promised wananchi during the campaigns. They gave them commitments, and this is not just a commitment between the President and cabinet secretaries, but it is between the government of William Ruto and the wananchi and the Kenyans. And Honorable Speaker, with the efforts the government has put in place, we can now, for more than a year, we can now start seeing the inflation is coming down. I was in Transoya yesterday, in Jepchoina, in my constituency. And Honorable Speaker, you look at the amount of food, maize that the Wananchi have grown, based on the subsidy that the government gave, fertilizer subsidy of 3,500. And we expect that the subsidy will even be coming down to 2,000, so that the price of fertilizer will now come to 2,500. Honorable Speaker, the farmers of Transoya in this year expect to harvest pamba harvest. And these farmers, they told me, Honorable Speaker, that we don't expect other people now to start demanding that we should sell at a throwaway price. We want to sell at a good market price. We've never asked our brothers from other regions, especially even from the Nyangsa region, who fish, to sell us fish at a throwaway price. We've never carried sufurias in our heads to demand that the price of fish go down. So they should not carry sufurias in their heads to demand that the price of maize goes down. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
The Honorable Mayaka, nominated member.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also stand to support this particular report. And before I do that, I just want to tell the Honorable member who just spoke through you that the carrying of sufurias is usually a figurative demonstration that we do. It doesn't mean that when we are carrying sufurias, that's when the food comes. It is an expression of a complaint that people have. Honorable Speaker, I want to first of all just recommend one of the recommendations that the report and this particular delegation has given on the need for us to have a permanent anti-corruption council that is akin to the Human Rights Council that is globally acceptable. I think this is a very good recommendation that they've made, and I would just like to urge the senior member to go ahead and come up with the particular policies and anything that we need to do to ensure that this is in place. Honorable Speaker, corruption goes hand in hand with bribery. And bribery actually begins from our homes. And how it begins is when, for example, when your young children do not eat, and you tell them that if you eat, I will buy you a sweet. That is already injecting corruption and bribery into those young people. And I just want to urge this particular council, and I hope it is open to membership of more members, that we must start this conversation right from our schools. And we do have school children that are always coming here in Parliament. But this conversation needs to begin from down there so that it is engraved within our society that corruption is not a good thing. Because, Honorable Speaker, we have come into a society where right now, and especially it happens on social media, that people celebrate when people have made quick money out of gains that you're not able to even have a paper trail. And these are fruits of corruption. We have a society where right now we over-sensationalize whenever there is a corruption act, whenever there is a scandal, but our money and our talks and our actions where we want it to actually make gains. Honorable Speaker, today we have seen the President having cabinet secretaries and State Department heads signing performance contracts. And I just want to urge the government to ensure that we do have these performance contractuals when they actually do happen, that they be documents that are of public, that the public can easily access. Because we want to see how are our cabinet ministers performing. We want to see in each and every portfolio, in each and every department, where there are corruption issues, how have the people who have been involved in such particular issues been prosecuted? Honorable Speaker, this also needs to just go down to ensure that even at the level of the Public Prosecution Office, that issues and cases of corruption are handled at a faster way, they're fast-tracked, more than the other issues. Because the moment a scandal comes into light, we talk about it, we as a public, we demand that, that these people should be taken to pay for what they've done. But because of the slow nature of the process of anything that goes through the judiciary process, then we don't have these issues being prosecuted as fast as possible. Honorable Speaker, I also just want to say this, that proactive engagement of the society is very important. Even as this particular caucus does its job, even as they go ahead and consult with other countries, both in Africa and the rest of the world, that we also need to just show an example from right here at home. Honorable Speaker, among the recommendations, they did talk about the Rwandan example and how they've been able to facilitate learning and training and enabling members to be able to see which issues they should be able to follow up. Honorable Speaker, right now in our country, we have a lot of our transactions that are paperless. But the one thing that we never do is a forensic audit into our paperless transactions. Who has done a forensic audit and brought it here for us to be able to scrutinize, for example, how IFMIS is being utilized, if the process is being followed to the letter, and especially for those that engage in public institutions, how they're able to do this. I therefore, with those few remarks, want to support the report. I thank you.
The Honourable Member for Garissa Township, Honourable Dallo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise and I stand to support the report. Madam Speaker, we all know corruption is a cancer in this country, and we all agree, all of us as a country, that we have a serious problem in terms of these corruption issues that has been raised. I think for the last 15 or 20 minutes or so, we've been talking about this issue. But as a country, I think we are not honest about this thing. The fight against corruption, we are not honest from the leadership to the people. We are a society that have decided to destroy itself through this cancer. Madam Speaker, if you look at this House itself, as we debate today, as we sit here as a House, many members came in and checked in and walked out. It's still corruption. It doesn't have to be about money. We walk in, we sign, we disappear. That itself, we are setting a very bad precedence for this country. The security lapses we have in this country, Madam Speaker, is as a result of people being recruited or young people being recruited through by paying for the recruitment process. And in fact, the head of the public service today in a meeting admitted that our young people have to part with between 200 and 400,000 Kenya shillings so that they are recruited into our security systems.
What's your point of order, Honourable Member for Kipipiri?
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The Honourable Member, I want to know if he's in order to reference that the members clocked and left out, if he cannot substantiate, because Honourable Members have many engagement in the ministries, in the constituency, and in the committees. Some members are still sitting within the environment. I think he's not in order, but you should guide him to substantiate.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. The Honourable Member is, I'm sure she can see for herself what is going on. And she's been a senior member of this House. I don't have to talk about it every now and then. So, Madam Speaker, I don't have to go back to it. As I was saying, it's not about the procurement alone or cash-involved issues.
Your point of order, Honourable Member.
Honourable Speaker, I think the member is ignoring the fact that members have got businesses to transact in the precincts of Parliament. And the fact that members are moving around, some are in the table office, others there is a big line at the Speaker's office. Honourable Speaker, please guide the member accordingly on the issues he has raised. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Garissa Honorable member, please proceed, but maybe with
Thank you, Madam. So I was saying, that was just an example I was giving, so I don't want to go back to it. Madam Speaker, as I was saying, it is not about only the procurement processes that, or anything relating to financial transactions. Our country, as a society, it's a society that have embraced corruption. And even if we form a council or whatever name you call it, it will be just another level of entertaining corruption in this country. So, Madam Speaker, as a country, and unless, we have to be honest with ourselves. We can't just be talking about corruption, and as has been said, those who talk very loud about corruption are just trying to justify their cut in the corruption deals that I have seen about it. They have not been included in that deal. That is where they are headed to. So they want to up their stake in that particular deal they are talking about. This country is facing a serious problem, and I am sure the only way we can get out of this problem is the fact that, and we see every week, more than 10 people in leadership positions who are convicted either by hanging or by life imprisonment. That is the only time this country can take a different direction on the issue of corruption. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, the Honorable Member for Manyata, John Gitonga. You're number 15, actually. Honorable Wanjala, you're out
Honorable
of order.
Speaker, defend me from
Honorable Wanjala, you're out of order. You can't stand out there and shout. Honorable member, you're out of order. Please sit down. You will get an opportunity. Like I've told you, you're number 15 on the list. Irene Mayaka, Honorable, has just spoken now. She was sitting right in front of you. Okay, proceed, please. Please proceed.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Wanjala, you're out of order. I will send you out of the House.
Honorable Speaker, thank you so much for the opportunity. I want to rise and say that the issue of corruption is an issue that is very emotive when it is spoken in this country. And Honorable Speaker, among the things that this Parliament should be able to really help and solve for the prosperity of this country and for the goodwill of the people is to ensure that we don't have cases that are just left without our oversight role happening, Honorable Speaker. The issue of corruption has been used in politics, and also, Honorable Speaker, has been one of the impending issues for the development of this country. We have so many corruption cases, Honorable Speaker, that up to date, they have never been closed. We have the issue of COVID billionaires who took money when Kenyans were reeling in problematic diseases and closed businesses. And Honorable Speaker, we as this House has a role to play to ensure we don't have issues of corruption going unsolved, Honorable Speaker. And one of the areas that this House has to play, Honorable Speaker, is to ensure the budget we pass. For example, the budget we passed of 3.6 trillion should be used efficiently and should be used in a way that we can stand in the people who have sent, in front of the people who sent us in this House and say we have supervised and we have ensured that the monies have been used in the right way, Honorable Speaker. And the amount of money lost in corruption, Honorable Speaker, previously we have had even the former president coming out to say that the the country loses close to 2 billion Kenya shillings a day in corruption. I am very happy to report from the word go that our president has announced himself clearly on the issues corruption, Honorable Speaker. And one of the things that he has said is he will not condone and in any way forgive anybody who is found stealing money that belongs to the public, Honorable Speaker. I want to welcome that move, but it should be accompanied with serious repercussions of anybody that is mentioned with issues of corruption, Honorable Speaker. And I was very happy today to see, Honorable Speaker, the cabinet secretaries signing performance contracts, which involves issues of ethics that are well enshrined in our constitution and that involve usage of our hard-handed resources, Honorable Speaker, in the right way. It is always very painful, Honorable Speaker, to see the way the citizens have really struggled with the increase in the cost of living, whereas, Honorable Speaker, we have had corruption holes in our government today. I would like to call upon this House to be vigilant and to take every single serious corruption issue that gets into this floor, Honorable Speaker, with the seriousness it deserves. And I want to promise the people of Manyata that I will not allow, in my own right, for any amount of money to be lost when I can be able to help that money to be saved, Honorable Speaker. I want to say that if we do that, we can be able to achieve development, Honorable Speaker, that has never been thought of. And it is very easy for the budget that we always read in this House to cover all the things that we are supposed to do, and we reduce on issues of borrowing so that, Honorable Speaker, we can have this country doing what it's called development in the right direction. The loss of money has made corruption to be an issue that
And I'm getting to you. The Honorable Member for Busia County, Honorable Catherine Omayo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really applaud this motion, and it is upon all of us to be responsible to take care of what the people who elected us have bestowed unto us. It has actually reached the end of the tether in this word called corruption, because normally it's theory. People talk about it, leaders talk about it, they come and go. We have heard of people getting billions in this nation, and they hide. Some videos go viral of a member of parliament counting dollars in sacks and hiding in the house. It's better every member, if they have money and they know that they made that money in cleaner ways, to keep the money in the bank. Why should people be digging holes in the house or having sacks and suitcases touched with a lot of cash hiding there? And also, we have had people talking of grace or maybe luck or being in the side of government and saying it is their time to eat, as if it's a joke, until somebody wrote a book about it, as if it is just a joke, and it has been normalized. So it is a high time we stopped just talking about this word corruption and not seal even those gaps that are there for corruption. There is a way, even as a member of parliament, being new, it is already in the system. You are told, if you don't do this, we won't pass this. If you don't part with this, we will put an audit query. If we don't, so we have 3 stages or 4 stages, and every stage you must part with this and this and this, or else we will frame you. We will do what? So you are like, so this is what has been happening since time immemorial. So you find that your work is derailed and nothing is moving because you've not parted with something. Let us give an example of even the recruitment that is coming soon, or the recruitments of police and other dockets that have come before. You just find that for somebody to get a job, they must bribe for them to get a job. A person, a child born from a peasant home, a peasant farmer's home, or a person coming from a family who hardly makes $1 a day. That means if they cannot part with that money.
Member for Bere, what's your point of order?
Madam Speaker, thank you. Is it in order for the member to impute that this House, as corrupt, when you want to, yes, when you want to come up with different legislative pieces, that there is corruption in different stages of registration. Is it in order for the member to impute so? Second, is it in order for the member also to impute that the upcoming military recruitment is already corrupt? I think it's completely out of order for the member to impute so, without proper documentation to substantiate so. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
That is how we
Yes, you do. I'm just saying, Honorable Member, you cannot cast aspersions on a ministry or individuals if you do not have the facts. So you can speak generally and just withdraw that.
Thank you, but also it is not good to cover up things. He's imagining it is not happening, but it is happening. If we had some loyal people, honest people, who really want to uproot this so that the real mwananchi from the grassroots gets something, then we should not be imagining that it is not happening. We have evidences, and if you want evidence, I can bring from top to bottom, because bringing from bottom up, I don't know. He actually interfered with me, but I was on track to actually condemn that we can be taking this thing all the way to Qatar and other worlds, talking about it, but it is here with us. So we have to start in our local villages all the way to see how can we best save every dime that we have been allocated to serve wananchi properly, and that every project that has been given to us, maybe to oversight, that project, we don't have maybe people, for example, wanting 10% for every project for anything to start off. These are basic examples that I'm just using. And we have people who are very good at choreographing everything so that they gain from every single shilling that wananchi have been taxed to help them. Say even in hospitals. Today, if you go to some hospitals, you will be told to go with the gloves and go with your syringe and go with the medicine because there is no medicine. And examples are given. People text us every day. Members of parliament know here the truth, that people keep texting us to help with the medicine, money for registration, everything from the time you enter the hospital to the time you even see the doctor. You have parted with the money, but you are still sick. So we need a way of sealing the gap and a way of also making sure that we protect everything, every resource that we have been bestowed to take charge. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, the Honourable Member for Mbere.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this motion because corruption is one of the greatest threats to any economic development and human development in any country in the world. And any house in the world, or any legislative house in the world, whether it is our Kenyan Parliament, or whether it is African Union Assembly, whether it is East Africa Legislative Assembly, must come up with pieces of law or convention or treaties which can be used to tame corruption for the purposes of posterity of our society, of our world. Madam Speaker, this House has a huge responsibility to ensure that we give our judicial system or our justice administrative system pieces of law which are not fair at all, which do not leave any ambiguous areas or gray areas, so that anybody or any institution which is caught in the act of corruption can be taken care of in the most efficient and effective way, so that the resources which are committed to some of these institutions, public resources, can be used properly. Madam Speaker, we have Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act of 2003, an act of parliament which at the moment is 20 years old, and I think, Madam Speaker, it's high time for this piece of law to be refueled so that we can be able to access the successes which this piece of law has been able to achieve. And remember, this piece of law, Madam Speaker, is pre-Constitution 2010. It's not post-Constitution 2010. Therefore, you realize, Madam Speaker, there are sections of that Act of Parliament, as well as some divinations which are not present in that Act of Parliament, so that they can be guiding pillars to our justice administrative system in matters fighting corruption. Madam Speaker, these fights must be made very painful for any person, any institution which get into corrupt activities. It must be made very painful. And that's why today we are happy that the President of the Republic of Kenya is indeed committed in fighting these fights, corruption, but we have to give the President, we have to give the government, we have to give the judicial system pieces of law which will help in fighting corruption. And any effort, whether it is coming from United Nations Convention Against Corruption, whether it is from this House, so long as that piece of law is aimed at fighting corruption, must be tailored in a manner that is going to make corruption a very painful exercise. And as we say, for those who will be corrupt in this government, we would encourage them, we would encourage those in the authority to hang them in the Torres tree at Uhuru Park. I support this motion, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable members, I wish to recognize the following schools in the Speaker's Gallery. The students and teachers of Moody Awori Primary School from Funyula constituency, Busia County. And Bitini Girls Secondary School, Kitui Rural constituency from Kitui County. And then in the Speaker's Gallery again, we have St. Teresa of the Child of Jesus, Olokirikirai Primary School from Narok North constituency, Narok County. Okay, and then the Honorable Member for Emwar Kidikir, Honorable Johanna Ngeno.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity also to weigh in on this particular issue of corruption and the report by the team concerned with the finding ways and means of killing corruption in this country. I want to laud my friend and a senior member in this House, Mheshimiwa from Kisumu, for that great report. I want to just state here, Madam Speaker, that corruption has been the biggest cancer worldwide, internationally, not just locally. It has eaten the fabric of the human society in terms of all the issues that governments try to do. Corruption has always been a blunder. It has always been blundering whatever the government tries to do. And one very unique thing, Madam Speaker, is that corruption is only embedded mostly on the public sector. When you look at the private sector, if it is banks, if it is private companies, if it is private entities, if it is even your own personal private home or your private farm, corruption is almost zero. But when you come to public institutions, public entities, public corporations, ministries, everywhere that has anything to do with public, I think there is a culture where people believe that this is money for free. I remember, Madam Speaker, we used to have some fields which are owned by the government, and we used to call it county grounds. So you can graze there without payment. So I think there is that mentality, Madam Speaker, where people have equated the public funds, public offices, public institutions, as if it is just there to be wasted. Madam Speaker, it is time, even as a house, sometimes, we speak to the executive without speaking to ourselves as members of this house, Madam Speaker. This house has the greatest responsibility to legislate on how to curb corruption. This house has the mandate to oversight all the corrupt people, either in the executive, in the judiciary, even in this house itself, Madam Speaker. We have the capacity. We have the requisite laws in place that can help to curb corruption in this country. So, Madam Speaker, as much as we might be speaking even to the government, we need to speak to ourselves. We need to begin with ourselves, Madam Speaker, because our government is corrupt when the people who are supposed to oversight those governments are sleeping. Our government becomes corrupt, Madam Speaker, when the legislature is completely broken down. When the legislature or even the judiciary, because, Madam Speaker, the legislature can identify areas where corruption is, but the judiciary are the ones who are supposed to deal with that menace. But you see, Madam Speaker, if the legislature has been compromised, if the judiciary has been compromised, of course the executive can do whatever they want to do. So, Madam Speaker, it is upon this house to really wake up and stop making and whining against the government, yet it is us ourselves, these members of this house, who can bring corruption to zero in this country. I don't know when we will understand also that we have the capacity as even committees, especially the PAC committee, the PIC committee, to ensure that there is totally no corruption in the country. So, in fact, we should be waiting for those members of those committees, Madam Speaker, to table in this house the reports on corrupt cases in every ministry, in every parastatal. Instead of coming here and saying, oh, this ministry is corrupt, this house is whatever, bring us a report. That is the work of PIC, that is the work of PAC, to ensure that there is zero corruption in this country. Apart from that, Madam Speaker, we also have the wastage as part of corruption, where you find ministries plying with so many vehicles, where you find all sorts of employees using very expensive vehicles, consuming a lot of fuel, etc. So, Madam Speaker, I think it is time we also help the government to curb corruption in this country.
The Honorable Member for Siaya County, Honorable Christine Ombaka. She's not here. Okay, the Honorable Member for Marsabit County, Naomi Wako.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important report against corruption. Madam Speaker, we know very well that in the entire world, corruption has affected the growth of every country, and especially our own country here. Madam Speaker, if it were not for corruption, Kenya would have been very far in terms of development and growth, but because of the corruption that has been practiced by different leaders who have been there at different levels, we are where we are today. Madam Speaker, anything or any report, any action against corruption needs our total attention. And that is why I support this report, because I'm one person who really advocates for a country without corruption, because that is where our delivery is, that is where our success is. And if we want to rescue this country from the challenges that we have been in for the last many years, it is only by overcoming this big animal called corruption. Madam Speaker, corruption has been so much institutionalized in our country today. In any place you go to, corruption is practiced. If you want to take your child to a school, to a good high school, you are forced to give money so that you can buy the space. If there are employment, you are forced to dish out money so that you can be lucky to be employed somewhere. And this is what Kenya Kwanza government is against today, because that practice has been there. And I want to congratulate our president, who is our leader today, and who has confirmed and openly declared a war against corruption in our country. And we thank him because he has taken serious steps and measures so that corruption in our country can be controlled. Madam Speaker, I support the report, and it is my prayer that all corrupt leaders at one stage will be in for it and will pay back what they have stolen from the nation. Madam Speaker, it is unfortunate because even some religious institutions, some places that we go to, everywhere we visit, people keep saying that corruption is eating our country and has damaged the growth of this country. Madam Speaker, if as a National Assembly today, we all act against it and we make sure that all corrupt people, from the people who are in security team, let's say even the watchmen at the gate, the people, the lift operators, others who are concerned with files at the lands office and all these other places, if today members of parliament will stand up and say that we are all against corruption and we are fighting it fully, I am sure the president will win this war against corruption. And that is why, as one of the leaders today, I want to identify myself with this report and say that I will give my total support for Kenya to grow, for Kenya to prosper, for our people to enjoy the dignity that God has given us, and for any person born and brought up in this country to have equal opportunity without corrupting his or her way for any opportunity that is there before us. And with those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I support this report, and it is my prayer that soon and very soon, Kenya will be out. Kenya will be free of corruption. Thank you.
Member for Bumula.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I arise to support this motion by Honorable Member, who also happens to be my brother-in-law. He's married from where I come from. Honorable Speaker, corruption is a menace that must be dealt with, and dealt with conclusively. We are where we are today as a country because of corruption. If you remember, in one of his media interviews with the fourth state, the last president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, told us the government is losing almost 2 billion. Former President Uhuru Kenyatta told us that the government is losing almost 2 billion every day. Madam Speaker, if the current administration can just focus on tightening loopholes to corruption, we do not need to increase the budget, for instance. We do not need to increase the taxes so that we can be able to be sustainable as a country, we can be able to pay our own debts as a country. Madam Speaker, it pains me sometimes when you find that some people cannot even afford health care. Some hospitals do not have even medicines. Madam Speaker, the last scene we had of KEMSA, where billions were lost, billions from donors were lost, to an extent that now the government had to return some money to the donors just because of corruption, Madam Speaker. I think as a country, as a government, if we nail it, we are going to succeed. It was not enough for only to sack the PS. It was not enough. We know that it takes two to tango. For instance, in the KEMSA scenario, you must have the giver in corruption and you must have the person receiving. So if the PS was the person receiving, who was the person giving? And a small bird whispered to me that it was the high and mighty. Honorable Wanjala is trying to guide my contribution by saying it was Gachagwa's son. I didn't say that, Honorable Wanjala. Please. He's trying to guide my contribution, Madam Speaker. But a small bird whispered to me that it was the high and mighty. So why are we sacrificing the poor PS if now the bigger people who are controlling corruption are working scot-free? They're still hawking around funny stories of shares in this country. And we are supposed as a country to head at a direction that is very definite. Madam Speaker, corruption has really affected us so much.
What's your point of order, Honorable Member?
Madam Speaker, you know, mischievously, the member who is on the floor has been able to mention the name of a person who is not in this house. And for record, I plead that you ask the member to retract because it is not in order to impute improper motive to the son of the Deputy President, and he's not here to defend himself. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I have a lot of respect
Honorable Member.
On my brother.
I think when I heard the first name said, it was actually shouted out by Honorable Wanjala. And Honorable Wanjala, I just want to bring to your attention Standing Order number 107, where it talks about disorderly conduct. A member commits an act of disorderly conduct if the member creates actual disorder, knowingly raises a false point of order, and necessarily interrupts the proceedings, and so on. It goes on to say that the Speaker may call a member whose conduct is disorderly to order, and then caution the member, or order the member to withdraw from the presence of the Assembly for a maximum of 4 days. So I think, Honorable Wanjala, you are duly cautioned in accordance to Standing Order number 107, 2A. So that this is the last warning.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Corruption is really killing this country. That a consignment of sugar jets into the country. It is condemned at the port of Mombasa. Then, Honorable Speaker, we are told that this same sugar found its way on the market, that Kenyans are consuming it. Perhaps we are all moving corpses. Because this government must be serious beyond that, Honorable Speaker. They must arrest. By now, we should be having these people who are involved in sugar industry, from the minister to the PS, to the CEO of KEBS, to the small person, that person who authorized this to happen, Honorable Speaker. As a country, I think we must be serious about corruption. And as a House, I think we must support this government to put measures and to fight these people, high and mighty,
We must do that as a parliament. And we must do that fearlessly, because even our own factories, our own industries are dying. Madam Speaker, most of us are products of sugarcane. We've gone through schooling because we plant sugarcane. As I speak today, because of corruption, a factory that was once very vibrant, Nzoia Sugar Company, which has 24,000 nucleus acres of land. We have Mumias Sugar Company, the giant sugar company, Madam Speaker. Today, they are dead as we speak, just because we had people who came in the name of managing directors, who came in the name of CEOs, and they fleeced these companies, Madam Speaker. As we speak, some of them are even rich. Some of them are even in this government. Some of them are even pretending they want to be chief administrative officers employed by the President, William Ruto. We are telling him that, Honorable Ruto, if you want us to also support you, please eliminate these culprits who fleeced Nzoia Sugar Company, who fleeced Mumiazi Sugar Company, and who are hanging out with you. I support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Bumula. Member for Molo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving this opportunity to contribute to this motion. And from the onset, I would like to congratulate Honorable Shakil Shabil, one of the most experienced legislators of this August House, who keeps being elected by the great people of Kisumu. I think now he's doing his 4th or 5th term. And especially having coming from that area and being elected as an independent, that even adds to that big win and the confidence that the people of Kisumu have on Honorable Shakil Shabil. Honorable Speaker, sometimes I ask myself whether we really hate corruption, or is it just that we miss out on an opportunity to get corrupt? And some of the people and the actions that we keep condemning, even at the floor of the House, that maybe if some people were given an opportunity, then those even scandals will be angelic actions. We need to have a sober and national conversation about the value of hard work. And we must also, as a people and as a country, get to reward hard work and meticulously. Because, Honorable Speaker, the reason why people get an opportunity to plunder public funds or even corruption in the private sector is when they feel that meticulously, diligence, hard work don't really get to pay in especially our government spaces. And when they realize that the person who is able to embezzle the most even becomes the most celebrated person in the society, then those people will do even worse when they get an opportunity. Honorable Speaker, someone mentioned about corruption in our homes. I'd like to give this example of how our parents treat their siblings, where the one who has the biggest car and the one who is perceived to be the richest in that homestead, when they go home for Christmas, then it is the best part of the meat that is reserved for them. And that person, that uncle, that auntie, who spends a whole year taking care of that old parent, gets dismissed and doesn't even get to have a seat anywhere in the conversation of that family gathering. Because even when we appreciate that there is nothing wrong in having wealth, there's nothing wrong with having a lot of resources, we must also agree that it's not all of us who are able to accumulate or to have so much resources. And therefore, those people, even in our homes, that their mere contribution to that particular homestead is staying with our grandparents, staying with our old parents and taking care of them. The money that you send at the end of the month may not take care of the parents. So once we come up from that particular thing, and you see it, even when we post the photos we post on social media, and that is what our young people feed on. Then we celebrate one when you have taken a photo in a big car, but when you are on a motorcycle or when you are walking, then it is not as celebrated. Because now, once now we stop that appreciating of that hard work and just celebrate well for the sake of it, it runs into the culture that we see in our society. But how do we address this over and above the generational conversation by reward of hard work? Is by making sure that our government system actually gets to work. And I kept saying this, and it's good that the Departmental Committee of Finance and National Planning has taken this upon themselves to move our accounting systems in this country from cash accounting to accrual accounting. Because what you see at the end of every financial year, and after the end, especially and again when you're approaching elections, is this need to spend everything. Because if you don't spend everything, then it's quote unquote returned to the national treasury. And so this gives a chance and an opportunity for these government officers to steal. But if you have an accrual system where it doesn't matter whether it is June or July, then those particular expenses that are programs that are budgeted for will continue, then that, I think, would be a policy direction to help end corruption in this country. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Pauline Lenguris, member for Samburu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, giving me this opportunity to add my voice to the discussion that is on the floor of this House. Madam Speaker, I want to say that corruption has become a great disease in this country and other countries also. Corruption has taken us back for many years, and we have seen many of our people suffering due to effects of corruption. We have gotten a lot of resources in this country, and if our resources were put into the right action, I'm sure we could not be where we are today. Madam Speaker, we are not only saying that corruption happens with money. There are a lot of processes that are corrupted in this country, and we are seeing most of our children who are graduates not getting jobs because they must know somebody in certain offices. We have seen also corruption in the private sector, in terms of employment, in terms of getting businesses, even in government. We have also seen a lot of corruption even in the churches. So corruption is all over and all around us. And this calls for the responsibility of each and every one of us. I've heard people pointing fingers to the government, and I think when we stand here, we are all government. Because in one way or another, we are all concerned with what is happening in this country. So we must all take the responsibility to ensure that in whatever we do it without any kind of corruption. Corruption in this country has taken us back in terms of development. We have seen a lot of money, even in different levels of government. For example, the money that has been sent to the county government. There are places in this country today where women still go for water for 20 hours, carrying water with donkeys. And you can imagine how much money has been sent to the county government to be able to serve our people. There are places in this country today where there are no facilities. If someone gets sick, unless they go to get traditional herbs, if they don't get them, they can die in the diseases that could have been treated if they could access services today. There are places in this country where there are no roads, there are no access roads, and therefore they lag behind in all kinds of development and businesses that could have assisted them. So corruption has really cascaded and it has made us suffer. And I want to thank the member and the committee that has brought this kind of discussion. Because if we are all committed to this, I'm sure with what we have today, we will not even need to borrow from any country. But if we put what we collect from this country into the right use at the right time, by the right people, and to the right programs, I'm sure we'll be able to serve our country and our people will be happy. Madam Speaker, there are many opportunities that our people are missing because of corruption. There are several employments in this country, and unless you know someone, you will not get employed, even if you are the most qualified in this country. There are also businesses that could have assisted those who could not be employed, but unless you know someone or you give out some percentage, you cannot be able to access it. So this calls all of us as members of parliament and even as Kenyans to try to correct this because it's not taking us in the right direction. So I want to support the committee and thank you for the good work that you have done and support the report that you have given, hoping that it is going to bring some shade and some light into this country so that whatever resources we have is put into the right action and programs can be able to serve Kenyans so that we'll see the face of Kenya in all that is happening in terms of employment, in terms of jobs, in terms of businesses, and all that happens in government and even in private sector. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support the report of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Karoli Omondi.
Give me the mic. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to support the report by my friend, Honorable Shakil Shabir. Madam Speaker, corruption would require, in my view, preventive measures, but as well as interventions after it has occurred. And I would like to highly recommend that probably where we need to focus more on is on how to manage the exercise of public authority in processes that lead to contractual engagements. In particular, I think the key to preventing corruption lies in proper procurement systems that foster transparency and accountability. And in that respect, I would like to encourage greater automation of our procurement systems so that there is a clear capture of the processes and traceability of the actions that precede any awarding of government contracts, but also the exercise of government authority. It should be recorded clearly and documented and preserved somewhere. I think greater use of artificial intelligence in our procurement process will greatly help us fight this menace called corruption. But tied to that is effective investigations. I think weak investigation has been the greatest challenge to fighting corruption in this country. And this is quite clear if you look at the cases that have been decided that had transnational character. Wherever we've had mutual legal assistance in terms of investigations and prosecution, the culprits have more or less been convicted. You will remember the case of NCPP and the South African maize, the dispute with a company called ERAD. We had clear mutual assistance from South Africa. And it is actually the evidence from South Africa that was able to be used to convict the culprits in that particular matter. We also had the Smith-Usman case at IEBC. Again, it was mutual legal assistance that helped. And there have been many other cases. So I would like to urge EACC to establish very robust cooperation arrangements or exchange programs with other investigative agencies from other jurisdictions that could help us nail this particular menace. Because corruption has a very great transboundary and international character. There's an element of state capture also that was mentioned by the majority leader, which I've been trying to push a motion on. This is where decisions of government are influenced by personal interest. Be they policies, be they decisions on contracts, be they decisions even on lawmaking. This, I think, is the biggest threat to most of our democracies today because of the international character of state capture, especially on big infrastructure projects that generally tend to create a situation of debt crisis as we are seeing in Kenya today and other jurisdictions like Sri Lanka and the rest of them. I think, Madam Speaker, I would also like to recommend that going forward we need a new mandatory course subject in our curriculum that deals with ethics, nationalism, entrepreneurship, and community of international interests. I think we need to have a subject such as that is as mandatory as maths and English from all the lower classes to the top at the university. Finally, Madam Speaker, it appears that much of the focus in fighting corruption in Kenya is on public sector. Even the tools, the legal tools that we have, the investigative tools, are more on the public sector. Yet corruption, there's more rampant corruption in private sector than in public sector in Kenya, if you look at the reports, in terms of the way authority is exercised. And even in the public sector, much of the corruption is engineered by people from the private sector. I think it is time that we also shone the light on the private sector in our efforts to fight corruption. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Member for Sotik.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to also prosecute on this very important motion. On the onset, I would like to thank the mover of this motion, our senior, Mr. Shabir, who has actually given us a very important motion today, and I want to thank him. I really want him to move ahead and bring in some legislative agenda so that you can be able to tighten this problem of corruption. Madam Speaker, I think, first of all, I want to thank the President of this country for making some bold steps to fight corruption. Today, if you are following news, the President was able to turn back the members of the cabinet who came to the function late. And I think this is a very good gesture for us, that we are able, that the President can himself tell his officers to go back. Corruption, stealing time, wasting time is part of corruption. So I want to applaud the President today for moving with bold steps. And Madam Speaker, I also want to thank the President for making a number of things. I don't think it's all gloomy in this country. If you look at what the President is doing, number one, he is moving the issue of digitizing the government services in this country, which will avoid the human contact. And I think this is the way to go, and I want to applaud him. I've been in government for a long time, Madam Speaker, and corruption has been fought by many governments in this country without success. And I think it's high time we ask ourselves, where is the problem? Because really, we have very good laws in this country. We have good legislation, and we want to see why we cannot finish. But I'm happy that the fight now is from the top. The political goodwill is there with the President himself. So I want to say I'm happy that we are going to fight corruption. I also want to applaud, those of you who have been in this country for some time, I want to applaud EACC for doing some work. If you look at this EACC, they have actually achieved a lot. And they have been posting whatever achievements they have put in this country. EACC has done a lot. I also want to applaud the President for appointing Bishop Oginde to be the chairman of anti-corruption. And I'm very sure with that religious intervention, this country will move forward. The other thing, Madam Speaker, I would like to mention is that I support members who have said we have to make corruption expensive. And making corruption expensive is to make sure that those who engage in corruption must be made to pay for it very dearly. And that is the way to go, and I'm very happy that our government is moving in that direction. But the fight is still far from over. Madam Speaker, I also want to applaud and support the members who have said that we have to start now preventive measures on corruption. And one of the areas we look at is education, starting from the lower level of our schools. Let us have our children being educated. Let us also have some public education to the public, the people down there, to fight corruption so that we can be able to move. We want a mass movement in this country to fight corruption. Madam Speaker, I also want to thank the mover of this motion, Mheshimiwa Shabil, I would like to request you, because you have done a very good job, I would like to request you, and we will support you, that we now start relooking at the law. What is the problem with the law? So that we can be able to move and make the better laws of this country. Madam Speaker, I want to say I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Kipipiri.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I stand to support this motion. And I would echo voices of those who have spoken before me, particularly on the curriculum of education. It's my view, Honorable Speaker, that corruption has become part of us as a country, as families, and even it has gone to even very small children. So it's my considered view that if we could introduce the curriculum and start teaching our children at a very early age, we may build them and their morals towards against corruption. Honorable Speaker, in 11th Parliament, I remember I was seated on the very same seat, and there was a motion in 11th Parliament which was discussing on the very serious measures to take against corruption, similar to what happens in China of hanging those who are found guilty. And Honorable Speaker, I only remember myself and Honorable Kangata then, who is the governor for Murang'a now, who supported this motion. The members started thinking hanging. I don't know what went in their mind, and I don't know what they felt. Maybe this, to me, I want to consider that then, as the Bible says, we have all sinned, we have all short of glory. I want to consider that members then may have considered that all are affected directly or indirectly, and if we were to go that Chinese direction, then every member would lose a member. But some measures have to be taken, and serious measures, Honorable Speaker. And this is one subject that this House have to give a solution to this country. Look at our counties. We send so much money to the counties. Yes, we agree recurrent expenditures are huge, but then, Honorable Speaker, you go to the hospitals, there isn't even Panados, even health centers. You go even to the roads that are mainly maintained by the county government, you find nothing is happening. Honorable Speaker, I think we need to give a solution in all ways. Education system improving, but also making a law without mercy. Could we go the Chinese way? I would urge these members of this 13th Parliament to go that direction. Honorable Speaker, it is very bad reputation for a country when investors would want to come and invest and they know it is not possible because of the challenges of corruption. One time I met an investor from Israel. He wanted to invest in one of our counties. I wouldn't want to mention because I don't want to substantiate, but since it was me, I would say it. And the investor was asked so much money. Believe me or not, he went to our neighbor here in Tanzania. He established an institution that employs close to 3,000 employees. See what we are losing as a country. We lose taxes, we lose employment opportunities, we lose even the reputation of our very beautiful country. So, Honorable Speaker, because I was waiting for my motion, which is next, I won't deliberate more, but I would second all the members who have spoken before me and say that we are the solution to this country because we are the lawmakers, but also we can emphasize on how it would be implemented. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Dr. John Mutunga, member for Tigania West.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I desisted from coming to your desk because I think it would be interpreted as corruption. Because I didn't want to come and ask you what happened because I was number 4 and I'm seeing many other people stand to the floor. Honorable Speaker, thank you very much for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, we are discussing a subject that is very, very important in this country, extremely important at this point in time. And we are discussing this subject as if we are not Kenyans. We need to contextualize this subject into where we are right now. We may say there is no corruption, and we say corruption has been nicknamed and so on and so forth. But, Honourable Speaker, corruption has taken the center stage of many decisions in this country. And we need a culture change. We need some process of enculturation. Corruption has also developed its own language. People know how to speak without necessarily even, having to utter a word. Corruption has also been used to punish the innocent. Honourable Speaker, we arrived to the examples of what happened some years back. Some individuals who are seen in government were involved in corrupt cases which were very direct. Those who were supposed to be their witnesses are the ones who were taken to court because these others had to be redeemed. Corruption cases are terrible. We have people suffering as we speak now for the last 7, 8 years, answering cases of matters that they never did anything wrong because their bosses had to be redeemed. Honourable Speaker, the entrenchment of corruption is dangerous as it is right now. It takes the form of influence. It has taken the form of lack of integrity or misuse or basically lack of ethics. During our time, Honourable Speaker, when we were in school at A level, we used to be taught social ethics. And in those lessons of social ethics, we used to be guided on what is the right thing to do, how do you approach a certain process, when do you know you are being compromised. Today, compromises happen every day. People are bypassed as they move on the queues every day. People lose their chances every day because of corruption. Now, we cannot sit here and stand here in this house and keep lamenting about corruption. What should you do about corruption? I want to make a few proposals. We need to do unlearning. We need to focus on the younger generation even as we deal outrightly and non-compromisingly to those who are corrupted today. We need to teach our children how to look at this. Honourable Speaker, when a member of parliament, a senior member of parliament stands in this house, like the Lindau minority, and say that corruption is budgeted for, we are misleading the nation. How do we budget for corruption, Honourable Speaker? That's an issue that needs to be revisited. Because how can somebody say corruption is being budgeted for? We needed information on exactly what the member meant by corruption being budgeted for, because members of this house are involved in the budgeting process. We engage the MDAs in that particular process, and there is nowhere where we put in money for influencing or for causing some direction change in whichever way. Honourable Speaker, we also need proper orientation of our children. They need to be guided on what choices to make in life. Honourable Speaker, we know in this particular country, at some point in time, children chose at the university to do a course called procurement. And why did they choose to do procurement until it was overfunded? Because we had cases of people who, on an evening, had 0 in their accounts, and the following day they had 59 million in their account. So they thought, probably if I'm involved in procurement, I'll be able to get money easily. But now, Speaker, we need to teach integrity to our people so that people stop looking for easy money, quick money, which has messed up our economy. I look at examples. Where do we have no corruption, Honourable Speaker? When I look at us queuing, for instance, in a foreign country, queuing at a cross-border where for your passport to be stamped, nobody passes the other person. And if you have to pass, there must be a good reason. Why does somebody have to pass another anytime, anyhow, until those who came early in the morning leave in the evening without having been served, and you say we are not corrupt? Corruption is entrenched in this country. We need to do something about it. And we need to start now by having a culture change. Finally, Honourable Speaker, the issue of proper definition of corruption. Are we talking about influence? Are we talking about nepotism? What exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about payments? Are we talking about stealing? What exactly do we mean by corruption? We need to properly define this so that we can guide our children on what it is that we are trying to fight. I thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I support.
Honourable members, despite the interest on this motion, the time limits, understanding orders shows that its time is up. So we'll call the mover to reply. You have 10 minutes.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. Before I reply, may I kindly, with your approval, donate 2 minutes each to To my brother, Bwana Wanjala, Honorable Senai, and
Mover.
Yes, sir.
Put
Yes,
it
ma'am.
in order. You
Yes.
have donated Honorable Wanjala 2 minutes. Who is the other member?
Senai.
Yeah?
Senai of Wajir North.
The member, Sane.
Honorable
2 minutes.
Honorable Senai.
Sane, yes.
Sane.
2 minutes.
And my member was Daima Omishmiwa there. 2 minutes there, please.
Those are 6 minutes.
6 minutes and 2 minutes to Madam Fatima. That's 8 minutes.
Yes.
And I can round up in 2 minutes.
All right. We'll have Honorable Wanjala 2 minutes. Honorable Sane 2 minutes. That way, Honorable Kirema 2 minutes. Honorable Fatuma 2 minutes, and you'll conclude in 2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
Honorable Wanjala.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, corruption in every single government starts immediately the government is inaugurated. It starts by calling members who have been elected to parliamentary group meetings. And then they are told you are in government, the other people are in opposition, so you must defend the government. But Madam Speaker, the work of our parliament, we have both of us from minority and the majority, we have to do 3 works only: legislate, represent, and oversight. So other people should not feel they are in the government, they cannot criticize the government. They are supposed to criticize the government. So it starts by blackmailing people. Madam Speaker, the leadership, when it wants to be corrupt, it starts blackmailing the church leaders. Church leaders cannot condemn anybody because the decision to condemn is by God. And I wonder when a leader, a government leader who is in charge, would go and appoint a church leader, a bishop, to preside over anti-corruption institution. This is where corruption starts from. Madam Speaker, today they told us Kimwarere and Aror, when they lost money, it was only 7 billion. They are in leadership today. They have not brought back that 7 billion. Madam Speaker, as I continue, they complained here of KEMSA. KEMSA, the newspaper, was awash that somebody's son was there.
Honorable Kwenya, what is out of order?
Madam Speaker, the Honorable Wanjala is completely out of order in the sense that whatever he's talking about is a motion that was passed by this House. Either he's trying to insinuate that this House acted in vain, and of course we know Parliament does not act in vain. And therefore I plead with you, Madam Speaker, that you declare the Honorable Wanjala completely out of order.
Honorable Wanjala. I know your time is over, but from what Honorable Kwenya is saying, I don't think you're really out of order by, you're not out. Continue. Wind up.
Give Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Give Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give God what belongs to God. Why do we go and pick men of God already appointed by God, bring them to what Caesar is doing? That is where corruption is entrenched, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, this country belongs to all of us. Scholarship in Wasiligisho, Madam
Member
Speaker,
for Marsabit, what is
where
out
the
of
president
order?
is...
Hold on, Honorable Wanjala. Honorable Wanjala, take your seat.
Madam Speaker.
Take your seat.
Madam Speaker, is the honorable member in order to blame the men of God, the men and women of God, while they cannot be here and defend themselves of participating in corruption? Is it in order?
Honorable Ako, I think Honorable Wanjala has made a general comment on leadership of the church. We also have bishops in this house who can defend themselves. So I will ask you to finish up, Honorable Wanjala.
I was saying, Madam Speaker, that even the backyard of the president today is where there is the biggest scam on scholarship. How long does it take the whole president with...
Your time is up. Honorable Sanei.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the generosity of my senior Honorable Shakir Shabir. I would wish to make reference to my colleague, Honorable Wanjala, in trying to indicate that the government is not serious on on corruption, whereas we have just come from a government that is so ugly, shameless, trying to fleece what was meant for COVID. The worst form of corruption since independence happened in the last parliament, during the last government. I believe this government took up the work of fighting corruption so seriously, and they have indicated severally that this is not a government to tolerate corruption. Be that as it may, Madam Speaker, greed cannot be taught in school. No curriculum can deal with matters of greed and corruption. This requires the upbringing of our children be straightened, the culture on how we bring kids. What kind of values do we imbibe on our youngsters? Madam Speaker, it's about tightening our laws. It's about how serious or effective is wealth declaration, lifestyle audits we have been doing, and they have become so conventional, so formal, yet not effective. Is Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission seriously up to the task? I believe they themselves are rotten to the core, that they can't hold anybody responsible for corruption cases. Performance and accountability on the duty bearers, those who are the accounting holders of any department or ministry, must be serious on matters of accountability. Madam Speaker, lastly, whistleblowing, public shaming, these are the things.
Your time is up. Honorable Member for Central Imed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First and foremost, I thank my chairman for donating those 2 minutes to me. Mine is just to say that corruption in Kenya is in one way or the other inherent in our blood, that we don't know. We need a proper definition of what's called corruption, because it is so much involved in the society. You come and find that from the time when we started the devolution, since the year 2010 when the new constitution was devised, corruption was devolved from the top cut from the national government to the county government. Because whatever you do, you will not achieve it before you have something which you change under the table. It's very interesting that even if you work for people innocently, at the end of the day, you find them bringing you something saying that they are appreciating your work. And I believe that's the that type of corruption. So, Madam Speaker, mine is that we should have a good definition of the same, and then we come with very strong law of how we are going to deal with those people who are bound to be culprit of corruption. For if you go to China, Singapore, and those other Oriental countries, it's interesting that when one is found with corruption, you find that the law is not lenient. But in Kenya, a number of things, if you are corrupt and you have a lot of money, you are given a very light sentence. And at the end of the day, it encourages even the small children to be corrupt. Is it possible we have curriculum whereby it is taught in primary schools and secondary schools that corruption is bad, so that it can be inherent in their blood? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Fatuma.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. I also thank my brother, Mheshimiwa, for giving me donating his minutes to me. I think Kenyans, we are pretenders. We speak so well here, but what we practice is not what we say. I remember just after we came into Parliament, the President came here and talked about how he's going to deal with corruption. But I was shocked to see that amongst the first people that he pardoned in the presidential pardon was someone who was convicted in a Kenyan court for being corrupt, and the President pardoned such a person. How else will Kenyan trust that he's going to deal with corruption? Of all the cases, there are those who stole chicken, they were not pardoned. But a thief, a non-thief, who has gone through court process, proved to be a thief, has been pardoned by the president. Does he really mean what he says? What is the meaning of corruption? It is actually to bribe someone. The youths were bribed. They were given money. They were called sweet name hustlers. They were promised nice things. Those things have not been given to them. That is also corruption. So corruption does not just mean taking money and putting it in your pocket. The churches are also corrupt, just as the mosque too. They lie to wananchi. When a church comes and tells you, give 10, I pray for you, it will turn into 100. That is corruption. So let us be honest, especially the government. Be honest. Telling us that you're going to fight corruption and pardoning a corrupt person, may Allah watch over you. I lack words.
Mover. Shakil, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam. Madam Speaker, I have been so overwhelmed by the and so happy to hear the support of my members of parliament. And I really am proud of you all. In the fight against corruption, it's a lonely battle sometimes. It's not very helpful sometimes. But when I have the support, the moral support of members of parliament, of the Kenyan parliament, it is a great, great encouragement. Mr. Speaker, what we need is executive, from the top. We need the executive, we need the top support. And I'm pleading to the president at this moment in time, as the president of this country, lead us against the fight against corruption. Whether you call it state capture, whether we call it corruption. Corruption really is theft. Theft of time, theft of opportunities, theft of everything else. So corruption cannot be killed by one person. Everybody must take a part, and it must have the concurrence of the leaders at all, from the president all the way down. Of course, I have heard many times that China is very strict on corruption. Yes, they are, and we've been to China. It is the Communist Party that executes all this corruption, and it is very important. Madam, somebody has asked what is the definition of corruption. Corruption is theft. It is there since time immemorial. Our job is to make sure that the Kenyan Parliament, as APNAC, and we're all members of APNAC, can fight this corruption. I have been asked about why I've been there for a long time. I'm trying to lead. We have a new executive committee. Every single member of the executive committee is new, except for me. I was voted in. I did not even want to stand, but I was told that I must lead the new executive committee. And finally, I want to tell you that APNAC is a registered organization. It has institutional, it is a registered under guarantee and is institutional. So let's work for this, and let's fight for corruption, against corruption, as APNAC Kenya. That is the Parliament and the Senate. I'm very encouraged. Thank you very much for the support you've given us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Shakil. The debate on this motion is effectively concluded. Under 53.3, Standing Order 53.3, the question will be put the next day. Next order.
Order number 9, motion. Report on a visit to semi-autonomous institutions of the East African Community.
The chairperson, Select Committee on Regional Integration, Honorable Wanjiku Muhia.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to move that this House adopt the report of the Committee on Regional Integration on its consideration on report on the inspection visit to semi-autonomous institution of the East African Community in Arusha, Tanzania, from 2nd to 8th April 2023, laid on the table of this House on Tuesday, 6th June 2023. Honorable Speaker, Regional Integration Committee is a select committee established under Standing Order 212, and its main mandate, in summary, is to examine the record of all the relevant debates and resolution of the meeting of the East African Legislative Assembly. It also examined the bills introduced in the East African Legislative Assembly and the acts of East African Community. Honorable Speaker, the Committee of Regional Integration also examined the records of all relevant debates, resolution, and the meeting of the Pan-African Parliament, the African, Caribbean, and Pacific European Union Joint Parliamentary Assembly, and other regional integration bodies, hand in hand with inquiring into the examine any other matter relating to regional integration, generally requiring action by the House. Honorable Speaker, I didn't need to read the mandate of this committee, but I feel as one of our key jobs now on the table is to make sensitization to the citizens of East Africa, citizens of Kenya, and the citizens of Kenya are represented by the members of this House and the Senate. I feel the need to keep on informing the members. Time and again, recently we had an issue with the members who sit in Pan-Africa when they wanted to present their report, and we read to them that we are supposed to examine those records so that we inform the House well informed. That being said, Honorable Speaker, the purpose of this inspection was first to equip my members of my committee in familiarizing them with the institution within East Africa, so that as we continue with the journey in the next 5 years, now 4 years, they get to understand which institutions are established in East Africa. Honorable Speaker, we also meant to make members appreciate the operations of East Africa institutions, organs that provide services in the facilitation of EAC integration. Also, to establish a basis for awareness creation in East African region and the role of the Parliament in the region integration process. Honorable Speaker, we were also intending to get feedback and recommendation from EAC institution, organs, on areas of policy support and any advocacy. Honorable Speaker, this issue of awareness, we will continue creating awareness because sensitization is everything, because people cannot deal with matters which they do not understand. Why do I say that, Honorable Speaker? It was important for our members to be aware. I want to relate with today's event in State House. Honorable Speaker, I broke protocol this morning, and I'm sure Honorable Felix Koskei wondered, and I denied him eye contact so that he couldn't rule me out of order in the presence of the President. And I carried this with me. I would give it to the majority leader because he was missing in the event. Honorable Speaker, our own government, my own government of Kenya Kwanza, is not aware of East Africa region. It is not even aware what is the mandate of East Africa as a ministry. And today, the Minister of East Africa did sign the contract of ourselves, leaving the contract, signing the contract of regional integration. Why do I say this? The East African Ministry was established time back when the summit sat down and found that matters of regional integration are getting lost in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And so they did sit as the highest organ in East Africa, and they concluded and resolved that each country shall have a Ministry of EAC. And this Ministry of EAC core mandate is regional integration matters. Recently in Kenya Kwanza government, our president did add this ministry the mandate of ourselves. This is an additional mandate. It is not the mandate which the East African Ministry was established upon. So it is very, very unfortunate that people making this program can forget that East African region do exist, and they think that East Africa ministry do exist to deal with ourselves. The original mandate, as foreign affairs is written down here on this program, it deals with the diaspora. The original mandate of foreign affairs is foreign relation, then diaspora and any other agenda can come. Back to my presentation on this report, but I needed to put out that, Honorable Speaker, is that the committee visited the semi-autonomous institution like the Secretariat itself. Though Secretariat is fully autonomous, but it is the mother of the semi-autonomous. They did visit the EACJ, that is East African Court of Justice. They didn't have the privilege of visiting IALA because IALA by then was having a sitting in Bujumbura, but they did visit the Competition Authority, and they also visited the ESAMIS. Honorable Speaker, they found a number of issues. They observed a number of issues. For interest of time, I may not go through them because they will be captured in the recommendation. But in this visit, Honorable Speaker, they first found that the community is constrained of financial stability. One, the community is facilitated by partner states. Each partner state contributes approximately $8 million per year through the Ministry of EAC, through Treasury. And this money, time and again, does not reach Arusha as expected. So you'll find a country is supposed to remit, for instance, in the month of July. That is why the budget again was meant to be read on 30th of June in all countries within our region, so that no country say, I have not read my budget, that's why I cannot remit. But time and again, you'll find a country like South Sudan, a country that we love, we respect, it is in the bloc, it's our brother. It doesn't remit year in, year out to a tune of $30 million. So this late submission of remittance bring delays in implementation of policies or other matters in EAC. The committee also did find the challenge of staffing in all these organizations, which has been there ever time in memorial, even when I was in IALA. There is always wrangles, and so the institutions do not have enough staffs. The committee also did find that lack of awareness. For instance, East African Court of Justice offers so good services to the citizens. The citizens do not use the court fully because they are not aware. The committee also found that the NTB, non-tariff barrier, is the greatest challenge to the growth of this community. Honorable Speaker, we will refresh our memory that our East Africa is established on the 4 pillars, mainly the custom union, the common market, and in the common market we speak of free movement of goods, people and services. But the NTBs in this region, Honorable Speaker, have limited this protocol to be implemented in full. There is always NTBs, name them, the roadblocks. This weekend we had a privilege to have a one-on-one with the Ministry of Road and Transport, and we intend to have a sitting with the Minister of Interior, because these roadblocks do bar trade to happen. You go at after implementing the custom union, you go at the border, one-stop border post, you find the mindset of the officers. They do not know that you don't need a visa to cross to our neighbor. The boundaries are currently there, but in essence, in the spirit of EAC, it's like those boundaries do not exist. That's why we have one-stop border post. So this mindset need to change, and all these are issues to do with the non-tariff barriers. Honorable Speaker, the recommendation of this committee, especially through the subcommittee that went to Arusha, is that East Africa, through the Ministry of EAC, to explore an alternative financial mechanism for the community. It is not any longer tenable to ask countries to remit, and we are not able even to sanction, those sanction is in the treaty, those who delay. The other recommendation from the committee is that there be fast tracking of amendment of the treaty. There have been a lot of work in amendment of the treaty. We have issues that delay the community, like the issue of consensus, that you have to sit, 7 of us, because now we are 7, and 7 of you have to be in consensus with an issue on the table. Honorable Speaker, today, 21st century, is just not possible That's why the community is not able to move. How can 7 people think the same? How can 7 people agree? There will always be dissenting voices. So it has been the push that this treaty need to be amended and this need to be fast-tracked, hand in hand with other regulation, like the Act of 2017 of NTBs. The non-tariff barriers framework is not in place. So as much as we say the roadblocks shouldn't be there, but how many should be there? For instance, from Nairobi to Namanga, from Dodoma maybe to Kobero or such. Finally, there is need to create awareness. Me, as the chair of this committee, I have continued to create awareness. I have continued. That's why I broke the protocol at State House and moved when my minister was called to create awareness to the country that East Africa exists. So there is need to create awareness. And with this, we shall be able to handle matters of East Africa well, because we shall be able to discuss what we understand. Those are just some of the recommendations, but we have quite a number. The key, which I would like the members who will debate to discuss, is the East African Court of Justice. Honorable Speaker, we are contributing money. Remember, the East African Court of Justice was established almost 2 decades. To date, it's still an ad hoc court. It doesn't work full-time. What justice do we give East African citizens if a judge will go and work for 3 weeks, come back? To date, the court is still temporary because it is hosted in Arusha, Tanzania on temporary basis. So it is up to the East African team through the ministries to agree that this court will now be permanently in Arusha. Then that chapter is closed. But most importantly, each partner state, through the ministers of East Africa, must agree that the East African Court of Justice have to be full-time. Maybe Omtata by now could be going to EACJ. He is bothering us here in Nairobi. But he's aware that maybe when he wants to go to EACJ, the EACJ is not sitting. And so are the many, many citizens of East Africa who have matters, but they are not aware when the court is sitting, when the court will sit, and that is justice being delayed. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg that members deliberate matters of East Africa passionately, because this is the way to go. For the information of this House, we just gave views of the political confederation a month ago to Arusha. This means we are already fast-tracking the final pillar of East Africa, which is political federation, but because we are not yet there to have one president in East Africa, the transition is the confederation. This is already almost realized. So members, we need to realize and understand and embrace matters of East Africa so that tomorrow we don't have a confederation, then we start asking, how did it come about? Where did it came from? We are the one who should guide our citizens by telling them on East Africa opportunities that are there, how they can trade. Because I'll tell you, the country called Uganda, the country called Tanzania, they do a lot of trade today, mostly on small-scale businesses than us, because they are aware. Their citizens have continued to inform them through their parliaments. Let's embrace matters of East Africa. Let's speak this to the citizen so that the mama boga here may be aware that in Tanzania we don't have boga, though we have the onion and carrot, and they can also trade. There is free trade of close to 300 million people. The DRC Congo is already on board. Our citizens are not aware. Plenty of opportunities are there. So let us speak and embrace matters of East Africa. With that, I beg to move, and I request through your approval, Honorable Beatrice, who was one of the delegation, to second this motion. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Kemei.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to second this motion on the report on a visit to semi-autonomous institutions of the East African community. To start with, Honorable Speaker, I want to thank our chairperson for being passionate about matters East African community. I'm very aware, Madam Speaker, that when we were given this opportunity to be in this committee. We have so many members, 22 of us, unlike the other committees, and members felt like that is the only place if you don't have another opportunity, you can be in that committee. It has nothing much. But I want to confirm here that with the leadership of Honorable Wanjiku, we are doing well. We have visited 1 or 2 places, but in particular, I want to talk about this visit to Arusha. And Madam Speaker, with this visit, I learned so many things, and I want to support Honorable Chair by saying that East African community is very, very important and dear to us, not forgetting that after always we sing our national anthem, the next one that comes is the East African anthem. That tells us that it is very, very important, knowing that East African community consists of 300 million citizens, of which 22% of them live in urban centers with a population with a land area of 4.8 million square kilometers. And the gross domestic product of that is of East African community is 240 billion, and that is according to the statistics of 2019. And knowing that more members are joining the East African community for now, I want to also be happy and appreciate the fact that Kenya is considered as the big brother, having other member or partner members being DRC, the Republic of Burundi, Rwanda, South Sudan, Uganda, and then the United Republic of TZ. And the community, from what we have, the East African community, from what our chair has given us, has these autonomous institutions being, in any case, the East African Court of Justice, the Common Market, and I want to also appreciate Common Market being one of the pillars here, with the activities being the issuance of the new international, the e-passport that came into place in 2019. So that one also tells us that we can move from Kenya to TZ to Uganda freely, and with the free movement of persons, free movement of workers from one point to another, the laborers. We also have services, capital, and all that. So with this, it is very, very important, Madam Speaker, to know that East African community is very, very important to us. So as I can also say that the East African Legislative Assembly is key. We have sent our members there and they represent us. The many issues and cases in that, the legislation are key. However, we didn't find the members. The sitting was not there, it was in Burundi. But we looked at the assembly, very interesting, very beautiful. But we hope next time we will find the sitting there, or in Kenya for that matter. Now, when it comes to the East African Secretariat, Madam Speaker, I want to appreciate the fact that the many challenges that, or observations that we made, which and Honorable Chair has actually spoken to us. One of the observations is the financial shortage occasioned by the fact that the member states delay in their contributions and remittance, and this therefore means that when they come to, when they sit, they are not able to transact the business. So it slows down the programs and everything else that goes with it. So with that, the East African community may not be very, very strong. So that was one of our observations. And I would also say that the free movement of the East African originated goods is frustrating, or is frustrated by the persistence of the NTPs even after 16 years of implementation. And that is one of the areas which we looked at it. And I want to also mention that one of the observations that we actually found is the fact that the trade between the East African countries is very low. The intra-East African trade at 10%, while the international trade accounts for 90% of the East African trade. Now, it was funny, we looked at it and say, does it mean that we don't trust even with the products, with the goods that we have? We don't want to trade among ourselves, but instead, we want to get goods from another country, yet we have our own goods. So I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that the member countries should pull up their socks, and Kenya, being the big brother, should always show the way. And therefore, the ministry that Honorable Chair has spoken about should work harder and be felt in the East African community. Honorable.
Honorable members, I now propose a question that this House adopts the report of the Select Committee on Regional Integration on its visit to semi-autonomous institutions of the East African Community in Arusha, Tanzania, from 2nd to 8th April 2023, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 6th June 2023. Member for Kwanza.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to take this opportunity to thank the chair of this community, and I want to remind her that when East Africa was East Africa, I was a schoolboy. And I can tell you, Madam Speaker, I think we have a lot to do. We have lost so much. She's quite right in what she has said, because I was there. I had 3 of my cousins employed as employee of East Africa. One was railway, East African Railways. In fact, my brother-in-law, who married my sister and taught me in school, was actually working for East African Airways. There was also East African Airways. Again, I don't think Wanji could know that, but I can tell you that before she was born, there was East African. No, I'm not really saying anything else. I'm just supporting you to say that there have been institutions in East Africa that I think this region has messed up. No, I didn't say anything about your death. I only talked about the future. Please protect me from the chair lady, because I'm just trying to say she has done a very good job. She should be clapping instead of actually...
Member for Kwanza, the chair looks very happy.
She's very happy.
Yeah.
Then I'm also very happy to remind her that I think as a country, as the community, we have missed quite a bit. Because if we went the same spirit we had that time, this region will be doing very well. And the chair has come up, she's meant very well, that even the inter-trade between the countries has been constrained. I don't know for what reasons. So I think this House should actually repeat this particular report very strongly and encourage the East African countries to revive the idea that we had, although those, of course, was colonial days, but revive, to be able to actually to have this trade and other relationship, even in schools. I know my own brother went to Makerere at that time, because at that time there was only Makerere University and Dar es Salaam and Nairobi University. Nairobi came much later. Again, we missed that opportunity. So, Madam Speaker, as a country, as a region, we have missed quite a bit. Today, when you want to travel, and I've traveled region to the region, I was going to Busia, and you know, there's roadblocks. And you wonder why roadblocks are there? Not because anything else, because the tracks that leave this country to go to the west, go all the way to the East African countries. And this again, I think the presidents of all the countries in the region should come together and encourage the inter-country trade relationship, because you go to Tanzania, down Tanzania, recently I went to Arusha, again, you are searched, you are as if you are a foreigner. where actually with for this community. And I will not be surprised at this rate we are going, will be now be asked to have visa to go to our neighboring countries. So, Madam Speaker, I want to say that we should do much better than what you are doing today to be able to actually revive some of those activities. I can tell you, with the population of East Africa, it's going up every other day. And if we actually can improve the relationship between the countries, we'll be able to have inter-state trade and what have you, and we'll do much better than we are doing now. There are quite a number of things that actually we can list up, and I think the chair must have all those things, and let's be serious and even dictate, because we are even ministers of the East Africa community. Is not there. So what's the, and you prefer going to China, you prefer going to Europe, you prefer going to other places, when you have relationship with a region that has got everything that we need, and we can export that kind of thing to these countries and be able to improve the status of the economy of our country. So I want to support this, this report, and I hope that this parliament will be able to force the countries, when it comes up, because Kenya was in the leadership of East Africa community. We should even revive that. So, Madam Chair, I think do something about it.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for Marsabit County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important report that has been tabled by our very able chair. And I also want to congratulate the committee for working very hard because this committee of late has been one of the best committees. And congratulations, Madam Chair, because you are so passionate on what you are doing and you lead by example. So I want to congratulate you on behalf of the entire committee, because even all this report is as a result of your hard work and your guidance that has really helped our committee to progress very well. That also confirms, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, confirms the leadership of women, because you can move from zero to something. And when we started as a committee, we didn't know that we can progress very well until our chair showed her real leadership skills that brought us to this level. So I thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to add my voice to this. As, of course, I've already congratulated the committee and especially the team that went on this trip. Madam Speaker, our committee has been able to visit different places, and one of the things that really encourages us is the free movement of East African originated goods. Is now one of the things that really encourages us is the the relationship that we have. And being part of this East Africa, we should be proud because we have people, we have our culture, we have the best, we have fertile and agricultural land. Our culture is so rich. We have so many good things and the resources that God has blessed us with. But unfortunately, again, sometimes we don't make good use of the opportunities and the resources that God has given us. And this report will help us understand the current situation so that we can improve on what we already have. Madam Speaker, the committee made several observations, and one of the observations that the committee made is the intra-East African committee trade for a number of years has constantly remained low at about 10%, which is unfortunate because we ought to have grown. But while we are at 10%, the international trade has been accounting for 90%. In fact, we should aim at growing our own economy, seeing how best we can interact and grow our businesses, because that will help East Africa to grow in a big way. And so that is one thing that we need to pick. And then the other thing is is the free movement of East Africa originated goods is frustrated by persistence of the NTBS, even after 16 years of implementation of custom union. All this frustrates the business and trade that happens, and there is need for improvement that can really have some positive impact on this. Madam Speaker, I also want to congratulate the Democratic Republic of Congo that joined this because this is the newest member of the community and of East Africa, which joined us on 8th of April 2022. That shows that we are also growing, and I'm sure in our growth there is a lot of strength. The only thing that we need to improve and also promote is that cohesion and understanding, so that we can unite and improve our economy, our development, our growth, and our agricultural practice, and also promote our culture that is quite rich. And with those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Member for Busia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really congratulate the committee for coming up with a very heavy dose about East African community. Along the way, I remember when I was younger, some of my uncles used to work in Makerere. There are some industries in Uganda, and they would easily just move and, get all these jobs easily. But along the way, the trade barriers, political instability, it threatened social cohesion, and also having maybe like similar products. There was this competition among member states, and with this happening, the member states lost the grandiosity that was there, the beauty of having, being together and working together as member states. So I know by now, most of us, even after colonialism, we do not have teething problems as nations. And the gaps that are there, I think most of these nations, if they sit and mean well and have targets as nations, they will merge and be stronger and come up with a common goal that can attract even international communities and make sure that no nation continues experiencing all these instabilities. Recently, when I heard the president of Tanzania say that the instability in Kenya has made them gain and get tourists and get investors, it was a bit sorry. That was a sorry statement, because if we mean well for each other, then immediately anything happens to our sister country, what member states should do is to come in and see how to help and not to look like they are celebrating. So that was a little unfortunate, but we still strongly believe in being together and not breaking away. The example that we've seen recently on Brexit, when England was insisting to leave European, how do they call it? The European community thing. European Union. What they had not seen, the bigger picture, is most professionals had come from these other member states. Now they are wallowing between not having enough professionals like doctors, and now coming up with newer and less not strong, stricter methods of getting professionals. Being together as member states, you will get a professional from this nation that maybe you do not have, an expatriate or somebody who can help in when you are lacking something. So it is scratching each other's back and not a competition as it has been seen way before. Thank you for this motion, and thank you for coming up with this. The committee, I applaud you.
Member for Limuru.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I like to support this report, and it is important, Madam Speaker, for us to know why we failed to grow the East African community. Madam Speaker, the people who colonized us. They looked at our community when it was strong, and they worked around it to make sure that it falls. Madam Speaker, when they were doing that, they were putting their house in order in Europe, and they came up with their union. Madam Speaker, it is important for this region to know that when we are trying to get together, there are forces which always will work against us. We know that, Madam Speaker, being together, we can be stronger economically, we can enable ourselves to trade among ourselves, we will remove the barriers that exist in transportation, in language, in education, in many things, including research, Madam Speaker. So as we look at East Africa, we must know that we live in a competitive world, and as the community is growing, now including the new states that are getting in and others which are trying to come on board, Madam Speaker, we must work to make sure that we stay together, we remove those barriers, that we look at ourselves as people who would create a bloc that can compete with other blocs. Madam Speaker, we had a very respectable union. We had the East African Railways, and the central workshops was based here in Nairobi. We had the research, the libraries and everything together for East Africa. But Madam Speaker, we can get our acts together, like has been mentioned in this report, and we formulate as to how we will fight the rest of the other world in this global and very cruel economic war that is ongoing. So, Madam Speaker, as a country, when we are talking of shortage of certain food commodities, we know our neighbors have been growing maybe what we need. In Kenya here, Madam Speaker, we know that we are manufacturing things that our neighbors will require. But what we need is to make sure that we gain from each other and not fight against each other. Madam Speaker, I pray for a day that the cost of air transport, for example, to Mombasa will be more or less like the same to fly to Entebbe or to Kigali. Because, Madam Speaker, we still are making things very difficult for ourselves because we have refused to remove the barriers between ourselves. We must make sure that within our community, we remove the barriers so that people can freely move and they don't have to burden themselves with additional costs that are not necessary. Madam Speaker, if you go to Europe, moving from one country to the other, it doesn't cost you much because you are crossing a border. But we still are keeping those boundaries and making restrictions which work against our people. So, Madam Speaker, as we go forward, it is my prayer that we open up these borders so that our people can make advantage of the resources that we have. And the biggest resource we have, Madam Speaker, is the people that we have in East Africa. I support.
Thank you. Member for Tigania West.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to this motion. Honourable Speaker, I stand to support the adoption of the report by the committee. Honourable Speaker, I would wish to thank the committee for taking time to expose the members to the institutions at the East African community level, especially at Arusha. Honourable Speaker, the world is going large, and the only way to improve or increase efficiency is to get bigger, because the bigger, the better. Even in machines, Honourable Speaker, the bigger the machine, the more efficient it is. Provisions are bound, Honourable Speaker, that we start with a free trade area. There was a time, indeed, East Africa was a free trade area, and there was free movement of goods and services, and a reduction of tariffs of certain goods. Right now, we speak of being a customs union. The East African Common Market Protocol has been signed. And the Common Market Protocol took time to negotiate because of the inherent issues we have as a region. This is because we are at different levels of understanding of what needs to be done. We suspect each other too much, and we are not ready to seed the ground, as it were. If you look at a region like the European Union right now, the European Union, they have moved further to what we call a common market. They're using common currency. You don't need to think about the changes of the currency from one country to another. The price of commodities are more or less standardized by the currency. What happens is that people agree on what to do in their region. Moving on, we would move into an economic union and finally a political federation. Political federation is where you have one president of the region. And those who have achieved this is the United States of America. There's no one else who has achieved. Because taken as states, they would basically be different countries. But US has the enormous power because they have put everyone into a process of thinking. They, Honorable Speaker, think as a country, develop as a country, and grow as a country. But they have their individual state-specific issues that they deal with. Looking at the East African community, Honorable Speaker, that is why I think it was a very good idea to expose the committee on what happens at Arusha. Knowledge is power. Getting to know what we have at Arusha is important for the committee, even as they think through and try to pursue issues to do with what the committee needs to do in the next 4 or 5 years. It was important for them to go to be able to understand exactly what is functioning and what is not functioning. It was important for them to basically be able to be appraised on what investments have gone on and how these investments are benefiting the different countries that we have. Going the integration way is the only way Africa can help herself. 2 days ago, I saw an African anthem, a hand of the ones within the African anthem. Talked of unity, talked of development, talked of togetherness. These ones are in Kiswahili. The largest, the biggest spoken language, we may say the more commonly spoken language in Africa today is Kiswahili. But if you look at Africa, the entire West Africa doesn't speak Kiswahili. A bit of Central Africa and a bit of Eastern Africa has more or less influenced the choice of the language. What are we saying? If we could speak the same language, all of us, we would have been more advantaged as we are as a region. It is our responsibility to grow and develop Africa. Let no one ever imagine that somebody will come from outside to come and develop Africa. Whatever comes from outside goes back in whichever way it is, and it goes back in a bigger way than it came. What we need as Africans is to think of how can we support each other to grow our regions and therefore grow Africa as it were. If we sat down as Africa, we would identify our endemic areas. When do we have potential to develop what? When do we have capacity to grow what raw materials, what kind of industrialization can we apportion certain regions, and how can we share these resources across Africa? As we look at growing Africa as Africans, we need to look at how does East African community, or East Africa as it were, position herself to be able to engage the rest of the regions of Africa. And that is why getting to know or understand what happens at this African community level is very, very important. Honourable Speaker, Africa needs the rest of the world, all right, but Africa needs to organize herself better so that it can be able to engage better with the rest of the world.
Your time is up. Honorable Fatuma, Full Network, member for Migori.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for knowing my powerful name. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to contribute. First, I want to say a big thank you to the group that put this together through the chair lady. Kudos, this was a good job. But again, I also want to state that the relationship we have with our neighbors, it's not building to building, it's human to human. And the people who are likely to spoil this relationship is us politicians. We need to be very careful with our statements. An example, and I'm sorry to say so, I saw a member of parliament, a senior member, talk about a neighboring president who had tried to bring peace between two brothers here at home. And he really talked bad. And I'm wondering, the brothers the other side, when they watch such videos, then they start thinking that there is no brotherhood between us. Because I think when two brothers are fighting and a neighbor wants to come in, that is the meaning of East African community. So politicians need to be very sensible and stop being reckless with their statements. It's very important because wananchi will cross the other side to go and graze their cows, and they'll be reminded what a member of parliament said, yet they do not even know what that member said. So I request...
Member for Tigania, what is out of order?
Order of Speaker, is the member in order to assume that when one side of the divide decides they have issues, the other side necessarily sees it the same way and therefore should get into an invitation of a head of state to resolve a problem that is not properly articulated? Honourable Speaker, that the member is out of order. She needs to tell us exactly in which sitting did the two sides agree to call anyone in to solve the problem, and which problem was it?
You've made your point, Honourable Mutunga. Honourable Fatuma, please restrict yourself to the motion, and the attributes on the speech, may it be a property of this House and not outside. Restrict yourself to the motion.
I stand guided, but Honorable Mutunga, I did not blame anyone, and I like being honest, and I don't like doing politics when sensitive things are happening. I didn't talk of any negotiation. I only talked of a member who made a statement. And I'm sorry about that, Madam Speaker, but I still say that as politicians, we need to watch our mouths. Honestly, we need to. Tomorrow, it might be me who say something that could interfere with our relationship with our neighbor. That's all I was trying to put across. Honorable Speaker, just on that note again, there are other neighbors who have issues while we are in East African community. As a big brother in this community, I also think it's important for us to talk to other brothers and sisters who have similar issues, could be worse issues than us. And to be specific, I would talk of DRC. They have issues. They are our neighbors. They run to us. Many of them are here as refugees. They are flocking our country. Sending our troops to go there only is not enough. We could also come out with a way to say that we can come in and help DRC have peace in their country so that the mothers of that country can live in peace. The children in that country can live within their rights. So, Madam Speaker, all I'm saying is, in this brotherhood and sisterhood, let us really, really cooperate and make neighborhood be very important to us than anything else. We do business with our neighbors. And if our relationship is encouraged more, intermarriages, businesses, and even other things, like there are times that Kenya we face drought, that our cows are forced to go to the other side and get water from the other side. Vice versa, their cows sometimes might cross to come this other side and have water. So I'm saying we might take it as a simple thing, just like pepper, that we have East African community and that's it. But we need to go down to Mwananchi and tell them, if you see a neighbor from Uganda, from Tanzania, or any other, that's your sister, that's your brother. We teach our children that the country, the next border is your brother and your sister, so that we can live together in harmony. Madam Speaker, I won't have much to say, and I support this motion.
Thank you, Member for Migori. Honorable Shieni Wakieni.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. And thank you for those who came up with this motion. It is a word of motion that we need to reflect on, particularly this time that we have integrated as East African community, and also asking our very good neighbors to join us, like the Somalia and the DRC, who have also volatile borders and conflict within themselves. For us and for East African community to succeed and go beyond, another duty that is bestowed on our regional leaders is to make sure that all member states enjoy relative peace. Without that, even when we integrate ourselves with them, bad bacteria may at times close into our country, and we may not have enough safe to make sure that bad ideas and bad behavior does not also close into our country. However, Madam Speaker, much more than everything else is that in Kenya, we have to refocus our focus on East African community, because I was in this country, a grown-up person, when 1 shilling was exchanging to that 6 Uganda money, currently doing at 16. I was here when the TZ money was 1 Kenya shilling to around 26 shillings TZ money. Currently, The exchange rate has shown that other countries' economies are developing, that today the TZ money is charging at 15. The Uganda money is charging at below 20. That means that other African economies are growing when we are not growing. Madam Speaker, the newly refurbished East African community was started by the late President Kibaki in conjunction with Yoweri Museveni and Jakaya Kikwete. The agreement was that for these countries to come to a level of development and trade area, we developed a free trade area where Kenya was to accept all goods from Uganda, from Tanzania, tax-free, and Kenyan goods going to Uganda, Tanzania on tax. Much later, and that period was agreed for 5 years. After 5 years, our goods are still taxed as if there was no that window that they were given to develop their industries, to grow their economy, to come to our terms so that our trade could just go on. So I really want to implore on our Committee on East African Community to look at that the same will not also be extended, that when DRC want to bring us their wood and other products, they will come to Kenya duty-free, and when we want to export to them, we pay tax. And on this one, I really want to thank the committee that really developed this program and have a very good observation on what is really going on between our good neighbors. It is not hidden that our treasure in Kenya is our human resource. And I wish that Kenya puts a lot of effort in exporting labor, skilled labor, to these other countries, because we have it. And if our labor is accepted beyond our borders to Europe and America, I think we can also export enough labor to our neighbors, and they be acceptable. They agree that our labor is skilled, and we export. They'll be our diaspora. And on this one, I really support the motion and thank the developers of the motion and the Kenya to move on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. There being no more interest in this motion, I will now call the mover to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. May I first say thank you to all members who have considerably debated this report of the Committee on Regional Integration. Seeing them becoming passionate, I'm sure we are getting majority on our side, because the matters of East Africa need to be known. Honorable Speaker, it's true, as the members have said, there is a time we had the East African Airways, we had the Kenya Railway now, which was East African Railway. We had the 3 universities, that is University of Makerere, University of Dar es Salaam, University of Nairobi, which admitted students within East Africa with specialization of law in Dar es Salaam, economics in Makerere, and engineering in Nairobi. We still have the East African cables, and the benefit of being together is immense. Honorable Speaker, today, regional integration in the whole world is the way to go. And I'm happy because even as East Africa now, we have gone a step higher, and we are thinking of the tripartite, where we will be coming together with COMESA and SADC. And Honorable Speaker, this means that we shall be able now to sit as 3 blocks in one and negotiate. If there is any agreement, we can negotiate when we are many. The other day, the president of our country said how one white man speak and address 55 of them. We have 55 member states in African Union. So we can be of higher advantage and get more benefit if we negotiated as one. But of course, we start at home as East Africa. As Kenya, we have a huge challenge that I throw to the government and every member who matters on matters of policy, sensitization and such, to try and embrace East Africa. What honorable member here have said is true, that even when we joined this 13th Parliament, those members who were sent in the Regional Integration Committee were like dumped there it didn't seem like a committee which has value. But today I can report to this House that through this mandate of the Standing Order 212, where we are left to examine record and inquire any other matter, we did engage the Department of Immigration, and we informed them that we are the custodian of movement of people, and people are not moving simply because they do not have passport. And they cried, they had to say budget and all this. And we told them, yes, you speak of budget, but you take money up front. When a citizen apply for a passport, he pay 4,500 up front. So how comes again you tell the citizen that you do not have money? Define ways and means how you leave some money at the source. And today, last week we had a meeting with the Director of Immigration and the PS. My committee is very happy because we really lobbied, knowing that the Departmental Committee on National Security is a huge committee, and it is departmental, but it has very many departments. They have prison, they have national police and all that. So it wasn't so much of their interest to look at to immigration. It was a pure interest to look at immigration because we want people to move with the passport. And we took this matter upon ourselves, we moved the matter, and today the Treasury has agreed to leave 1.3 billion. The Department of Immigration normally collects 3 billion on passports only. 1.3 will be remaining at immigration. This will make them have the machine serviced, buy the booklets, and make sure that there is continuity of work. This is just to demonstrate how this committee can cross-cut in all ministries and make things move. I can also report that this weekend, Honorable Murkomen has confirmed to us that the government is in communication with Uganda, and very soon we are returning the East African Railway, because the railway from Naivasha is headed to Uganda through Malaba. And in fact, over the weekend, when we finished the meeting, he had a meeting with the ministers from from Uganda. It is just to indicate to members that things are happening, but we need to do more. We have to realize that the richest men in Africa, appointing case being Dagote, they have always traded within Africa. How comes us want to trade with China, with India? When we look at European Union, they are so strong because they are always moving together. So we must be strong, but Kenya as a country, and Honorable Speaker, you being one of the administrators or leadership of this House, you have to help our committee to make sentences that are heard by the government, because I think time and again, even the government stakeholders are not aware the potential and opportunity lying ahead of this country on East Africa. I thank you once more to all members who have participated, and we continue to do more, and we continue to bring more report in this House. With that, I thank you, and I don't know if I say I beg to move. I beg to reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You beg to reply. And for the convenience of the House, understanding Order 53.3, we will defer the putting of the question. Order, members. And the time being 7 p.m., this House stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 2nd of August, 2023, at 9:30 a.m.